Welcome back to Kings of the North, Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis, and a special guest, Bill, Ari Wasserman, your friend and mine, really more of a brother, will be joining us later on in the show. We're excited to have Ari, right?
We are excited to have Ari. Ari, in a bit of a career transition, taking some time to talk with us here on KOTN, so we appreciate that.
You say career transition, I just say unemployed. But it's not. It's actually not true. Like, everybody loves Ari, and so we are going to have the three of us do a draft of the best quarterback matchups this year in college football. North and South, all over the board. It's not the best team matchup. It's the two quarterbacks head-to-head that fans, us, would be most jazzed to see. Probably because they're both good, but maybe because the quarterbacks are kind of exciting train wrecks and we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe you could pick like a high ceiling, low floor kind of matchup where it's like both these guys might throw 4 touchdowns or both these guys might throw 3 picks. But the bottom line is I cannot wait to watch these two QBs in the same game. Those are the parameters for the draft, right? Is that how you're thinking of it?
Yeah, I know would toss in another scenario. It'd be like some narrative, like quarterback transfer, maybe facing his former team or one-time commit of a program facing that program which he was once committed to, kind of thing.
Oh, see, I didn't. You didn't tell me to think about that. I didn't think about that. I got to go to change my list. No, I'm excited, and I'm excited to talk about it. It will allow us, and I want to talk about how good the quarterback play in college football is actually going to be this year. I have a take that it at the moment looks like the worst year for college football quarterbacks since blank, at least at the top when it comes to sure things. So I want to see what you and Ari think about that. And then we will do Whatcha Watching, Whatcha Eating, Whatcha Thinking at the end, because Ari said if he's coming to talk to us, he's going to talk about food and TV.
Yeah, I mean, every conversation I have with Ari is what you watching, what you eating, what you thinking. So we might as well record it like one time.
It's like you guys can either talk about frozen pizza on the show or you can talk about frozen pizza off the show. Right. So we're going to do it on the show. So that'll be the back half of the show. But we want to lay down some groundwork here of where. Oh, we want to tell people we're going live. Sure. I have a whole thing at the end. I want the three of us to talk about podcasting and show making and the best way to engage an audience and serve an audience. And one of the ways to do that is to not do 12 minutes of blah, blah, blah at the start of a show and just get into it. But I just want to remind people, a week from today, we are recording this. It's not today that you're seeing it. We're recording this on Monday, August 19th. On Monday, August 26th, on Monday, August 26th at noon Eastern on that day, we will go live with Kings of the North. And we will be a live show Monday through Thursday, noon till about 1:30, maybe 1:20 some days. We're shooting for like 75 to 90 minutes. Monday through Thursday, every day of the season. And a live post-game show, 11 p.m. to midnight on Saturday nights. Every Saturday night, like wrapping up the most interesting things that happened with the lean towards Northern football. And then a couple things in the morning during the week that'll be recorded that you can wake up with them in the morning for a short hit. The biggest one of which will be our Friday morning Bets of the North. God, I can't talk today. Bets of the North gambling show with Tyler Shoemaker. So we're going to be producing like a ton of content. I think the season warrants it, Bill. But we just want to remind people, Monday, August 26th, check out the Kings of the North feed on YouTube at noon because we'll be doing our thing.
Yeah, for those of you who have been following us, like you're going to get a lot more of us. And for those of us who don't like this, sorry, you're going to get a lot more of us.
It's a very fair thing. Like apologize for our presence is a tenet of the show. So next Monday, we will sort of reintroduce everybody to us. I have maps. Why are we doing this? What is this? Why are these the 28 teams that we're talking about? We'll sort of reset it for everybody. But we want to reset this. The 28 Northern starting quarterbacks, not all of them have been named. There were multiple coaches who said, we will name starting quarterbacks this week. Scott Satterfield at Cincinnati said that. Matt Rule at Nebraska said that. But there's not a ton that
we also know the answer to those questions too.
So there's maybe 3 that we actually don't know for sure. Mm-hmm. I would say right now, but we'll run through all 28. I just want to do this real quick. Based on the 28 that I think it's going to be, do you want to guess how many are the same quarterback that took the most snaps at quarterback for that team last year of 28 Northern teams?
17.
Same quarterback as last year. 28 Northern teams, the same one taking the most snaps. I'm going to let you guess again. The same one, 28.
Was I low?
You said 17. I'm going to let you guess one more time before I reveal it.
I was just going through all of them. I felt like it was like kind of a nice split. I don't know, 14. Am I going over 7? Okay.
Does that blow your mind? 28, same guy?
I was like going through it for the power rankings that I'm going to present here later. So like I knew it was a nice number, but I didn't actually count it up. I thought it was more of a split. I thought it was like 14. So 7 is more. Yeah.
Okay. So let's start with those 7. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the 7 Northern teams that will play the same quarterback. Drew Allar is back at Penn State. We know that. That's the deal. But Bo Pribula is going to work in at times in an interesting way. Penn State's set. Hudson Card is back at Purdue. We like Marcos Davila as a backup, young, right? Looked good in the spring game. I'm all about Marcos. But Hudson Card's the guy. We're in on that, right? Purdue, Hudson Card. Mm-hmm. Shedeur Sanders. I actually don't even know who Colorado's backup quarterback is. I'm assuming that if something happens to Shedeur Sanders, Dion's just going to shut down the program.
It's the backup to Shedeur Sanders is hurt Shedeur Sanders.
Or his brother, right? I don't know. His brother will move over from safety, or Dion will just activate himself and play and run the wishbone. I don't know. So Shedeur Sanders is the guy. We all know that. Garrett Greene, my friend and yours, right, at West Virginia. He's the guy. Nico Marchiol, like we still like him, but Garrett Greene's the guy. Yeah. We love him, right?
Garrett Greene. We're going to talk about Garrett Greene. He's the guy. Yeah.
Oh, we're going to talk about Garrett Greene. Rocco Becht at Iowa State. They have a little bit of a pipeline there. I think they feel good about their future, right? They have like a top 20.
Yeah.
They have David Dude. They have the next guy, but Rocco Becht's the dude. All feel good about that, right?
Yeah.
Illinois, Luke Altmaier, they have not officially named that yet. Donovan Leary is still lingering. He, I thought, showed flashes in the spring game, just sort of reading and listening. And listen, just so people know, like we read about stuff. All the beat writers on the ground for all these 28 Northern teams do a great job. We watch press conferences. We check in on things. It feels like it's definitely going to be Luke Altmaier. Not that anyone maybe has been great in camp. The one thing is Luke Altmaier was not named one of the Illinois captains. The last time this felt like a big thing was when Connor Cook wasn't named the captain for Michigan State a decade ago. I don't know if anybody cares if the starting quarterback. Do you care if the presumed returning starter at quarterback is not a captain?
I raise an eyebrow a little more if it's a returning starter. Like people, Ohio State named its captains over the weekend, and some people are like, "Oh, Will Howard's not the captain." It's like, well, he's new. I get that, but yeah, if you're multi-year in the program, multi-year starter, and you're a quarterback, you're not the captain. It's like, that's a little odd, but not a huge deal.
Not a huge deal. And then the last guy is your friend of mine, Thomas Castellanos at Boston College. That in the spring we were curious about what Bill O'Brien would think of Thomas Castellanos. That was the one place I did get in the spring, and I think there are reports. There was a practice the other day where they didn't let Thomas Castellanos run. They didn't let him scramble at all, and he threw 3 picks in practice. It was like, okay, well, but Bill O'Brien has said he's the starter. Grayson James is a transfer. He's in the mix. He's a little bit more of a pocket passer. We wondered if Bill O'Brien would be interested in that, but he has said Thomas Castellanos is the starter. And Bill O'Brien, if he elevates quarterbacks, if that clicks, we like the potential of Thomas Castellanos in that offense, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. At the very least, it could be interesting in a bad way, I suppose. But I'm actually, I'm pretty excited to see if Bill O'Brien can put some polish on Thomas Castellanos.
Can I tell you that there is a game that is on the board? There's there's a game that is maybe on the board for Thomas Castellano's draft pick of a quarterback matchup. All right, so those are the 7 where it's going to be the same starting quarterback, at least to start the year, as the guy who took the most snaps last year. All right, there are 3 places where there is a established starter. He just was hurt last year, and so he wasn't the guy who took the most snaps last year because he was hurt. But he's the starter this year. That's Cam Rising at Utah.
Yep.
That's Jalen Daniels at Kansas. Nothing to really talk about with either of those other than they're experienced guys that you and I both took in our Heisman draft last week. So we're eager to see Jalen Daniels and Cam Rising, right?
Very much eager. Yeah. Especially Cam Rising. Like, and Jalen Daniels has been out a little bit too, but it's like, I want to see Cam Rising for the first time in over a year.
Yeah. And then the other guy is Cade McNamara at Iowa, who is the presumed starter after getting hurt last year. But there was very much attention paid to the fact that they had an open practice, like I guess 2 weeks ago now, where Cade McNamara did not look good. And the fans saw it and everybody saw it. And I think people started freaking out a little bit. They also have Brendan Sullivan, the transfer from Northwestern, who was a starter at Northwestern last year, who is in the mix there, or at least was not the starter, at least started some games at Northwestern last year behind Ben Bryant, is in the mix. But again, reading some stuff around Iowa, it feels like maybe Cade McNamara had a decent week since the kind of rough showcase. It's a huge deal whether Iowa can get competent quarterback play or not, but I feel like maybe that public exposure was the bottom and maybe it'll bounce back up, but we're keeping our eyeballs, especially for week 2. When Iowa gets to week 2 against Iowa State, like is Cade McNamara or whomever is the starter, if it's Brendan Sullivan, are they ready to play better than Deacon Hill played last year after Cade McNamara got hurt? It hasn't officially been named. It is a huge deal. But if it works out, Cade McNamara has been a playoff quarterback at Michigan. So it could be okay, but it's rough right now.
It could be okay. Yeah. Kirk Ferentz didn't help things when he was asked after that scrimmage, I believe by Scott Docterman, whether or not that was a, quote, typical day for the quarterbacks. And Kirk Ferentz was like, yeah, it was.
Oh, okay.
It's like, all right. Maybe lie. That's the case.
No, when nobody's here, they're great. Yeah. Okay. So those are the 3. So that's 7 same, 3 not the same, but kind of the same, right? So you know what we're saying there. So that's 10. So that leaves 18 spots. How many of the 18 do you think are expected to be starters who transferred in this year? And how many are guys who were in the program last year and are sort of elevating to the starting role of the final 18 spots?
It was a 14 or transfers?
13. So that's a good guess. So let's actually run through the 5 who were elevated within the program first as we think about starting quarterbacks. So Nate Yarnell at Pitt did not start the most games last year for them, but he did start a couple games. In the spring, Pat Narduzzi said Nate Yarnell's the guy. And now in August, he said Nate Yarnell's probably the guy. But Eli Holstein, the Alabama transfer that you and I are very excited about, and everybody is, former borderline 5-star recruit, remains in that mix. It is our plan to go to Pitt this week. We think we will be there, get some eyeballs on practice. We may even be there potentially when they name a starting quarterback. I think it's 2 okay options, but there's a part of me that's like super curious for Eli Holstein, but it feels like it's going to be Nate Yarnell, at least to start, who's from within the program.
Yeah, I would think so. I'm likewise excited for Eli Holstein too, and his potential, just like raw recruiting pedigree, better than Nate Yarnell. And I think it's weird that Pat Narduzzi named the guy a starter in the spring, and they're like, is he like motivating? Is he truly backing off a guy, or is Eli Holstein like kind of rocking? I don't know. It's an odd situation. It is not. Those are not comments that inspired a lot of confidence for me to name a guy and then undermine him once you get in the camp. I didn't love that.
Unless Eli Holstein, who was at Bama last year, is just ripping it.
Yeah,
like that could be like we thought we knew, and Eli Holstein makes us unknow this.
Sure, if that's the case, then I'm okay with that. Yeah,
I'm open to that. All right, 2 young guys. Avery Johnson as a second-year quarterback at Kansas State, and Dillon Raiola as a true freshman at Nebraska. It's going to be Avery Johnson. Dillon Raiola is going to be named it this week. Great situations for Kansas State, Nebraska, right?
Very good situations for Kansas State and Nebraska. Yeah, very excited about both.
Alex Orji remains in a battle at Michigan to the extent that like Sharon Moore sort of said, maybe we'll name it like the day of the opener against Fresno State. I don't know. Jack Tuttle and Davis Warren still in that mix, but then also the people around Michigan, it's like, okay, it's going to be Alex Orji, but it hasn't been named. We thought maybe that would be a transfer landing spot for somebody in the offseason. That's not the way they went. So it's not official, but how much are you assuming it's going to be Alex Orji?
I'm still assuming it's Alex Orji, and I think maybe I am willing to keep an open mind on this just being the kind of gamesmanship that coaches sometimes find necessary when they're trying to figure out who their starting quarterback is. I hope it's that for Michigan's sake, because I don't know that I'd love a world where Jack Tuttle and Davis Warren are making it interesting against Alex Orji. So I think for Michigan's sake, it better be just that Sharon Moore doesn't want to tip his hand just yet because they're playing a good team to open the season.
And the last one that feels like it's going to be internal, which is maybe a little bit of a surprise, is Maryland. That competition is still wide open, it seems. It's Billy Edwards and Cam Edge who are on the roster, and MJ Morris, who's the transfer from NC State, had started at NC State before. I think you and I everybody maybe thought, they're going to get to MJ Morris. Mm-hmm. But it feels like it's maybe going to be Billy Edwards, who's been around the block a little bit at Maryland. So I'm calling it Billy Edwards, which is why he's in this category, because he's a quarterback who wasn't the main starter last year, but he's from within. But this might be, there's probably two that it's truly a competition that I think is not decided yet. I think Maryland is one of them where it sounds like Mike Loxley has not actually made a choice, and I'm not even sure if he knows which way he's leaning for sure.
Yeah, and I could see this being one that maybe goes back and forth throughout the year too. We've seen that happen. I will say, like, I think I mentioned this before. I when I was at the Athletic, I wrote the Maryland State of the Program, I think 2 years ago, talking to Mike Loxley in the preseason, and he was pretty fired up about Billy Edwards. That was the offseason they added him from Wake Forest. Talia Tagovailoa was still there, but they liked him very much as a backup when they got him. And I think some of the stuff he did last year, especially as a run threat when they put him in games, was promising. So I would assume probably it's him based off some of those conversations and based off how this is progressing. But I could see it being a situation where Cam Edge, who's still like fairly young, and MJ Morris are kind of pushing throughout the season, and maybe we'll still see multiple starting quarterbacks from Maryland throughout the year.
So those are the five where it's going to be a new guy from within, probably. And like you said, Billy Edwards was a transfer, but he's not a new transfer for this season.
Yeah.
So then there's one that's on the border. I called this a transfer winner because I think that's what's going to happen, but I think it's also one of the places where true competition continues, and that's at BYU with Gary Bohannon as a transfer and Jake Retzlaff as an internal guy. It feels like it's got, the reporting there is like maybe it was Bohannon 1 week and Retzlaff another week. I gave the lean to Bohannon, which I put this in the transfer category, but it feels like this is a real competition still.
Seems like it. I would probably lean Bohannon too, you're sort of banking on what Bohannon was 2 years ago, I guess, at Baylor, right? Or maybe 3 years ago at Baylor. There's more proven production there. So I think as long as Gary Bohannon is healthy, and it sounds like he's healthy, then I would imagine it's going to be him whenever Kalani Sitake decides to make that decision.
So that's one of the transfers. Let's run through the other 12 starters that we expect to be transfers in the North. Kyle McCord at Syracuse, transfer from Ohio State. He's the guy, right?
Mm-hmm. He is the guy.
Riley Leonard at Notre Dame, transfer from Duke. He's the guy.
Yep.
Brendan Sorsby at Cincinnati. Scott Satterfield said they're going to name a starting quarterback in the middle of this week. Brady Lichtenberg is the internal guy there, but transfer from Cincinnati, we all assume it's going to be Brendan Sorsby. And you kind of like Brendan Sorsby, right?
I do like Brendan Sorsby. He's a pretty good athlete, and I thought showed some stuff at times last year in a bad Indiana situation. So he's got probably better skill around him and a pretty good offensive line. He could be a little bit of a sleeper when you're talking Northern QBs this year.
Max Brosmer at Minnesota. They have a nice freshman in Drake Lindsay, who's the future there. Again, I like building rooms. Old guy, solve a problem. Young guy on the way up, but it's definitely Brosmer for this year from New Hampshire, right?
Yep.
David Braun at Northwestern says the competition is continuing. They have Mike Wright, the transfer from Vanderbilt. They have Jack Lausch, who was not really played as an internal guy. The last time anyone talked to Braun, he was like, it's on. I'm assuming they're bringing in Mike Wright, who again is a pretty good athlete from Vanderbilt, to be the guy, but it hasn't been named yet, but I'm calling it. The transfer is probably going to win that one.
I would call that as well. athletic upside. I think you're going to need it. So I would imagine that's Mike Wright.
Tyler Van Dyke at Wisconsin named a starter last Wednesday. The transfer from Miami beat out Braden Locke. At Indiana, Kurt Signetti has not named a starter yet, but he said that Curtis Rourke, the MAC transfer, separated himself this week from Taven Jackson and Tyler Cherry. You assume it's going to be Curtis Rourke, right?
Yeah, but I liked what I've heard about Taven Jackson. I find his development with this staff in the offseason exciting, but I definitely think it's going to be Curtis Rourke to start the season.
Decent situation for Indiana there. And again, Tyler Cherry is a pretty high recruit young guy. It's like it's a pretty nicely built room there.
Not a bad room. Yeah.
We like the rooms. We like you when you build a good room. We're still trying to build a good room here. We got plans. It's like there's some shadows and we have thumbtacks. We're still building a room is very relatable to me right now. Michigan State, it's Aiden Childs. They have Tommy Schuster, who's a longtime starter at North Dakota, who's a transfer also, which is kind of like an interesting guy to have in right there ready. A guy who's played a lot, but Aiden Childs from Oregon State. Follow Jonathan Smith. You're excited about him.
Yeah. Couldn't be more excited about him.
And then 4 locked in guys. Ethan Kaliak-Manis, the Minnesota transfer, was named the starter in the spring. Will Howard at Ohio State, the Kansas State transfer, was named the starter last Thursday. At Oregon, Dillon Gabriel, the transfer from Oklahoma, has been the starter since he got there. And Will Rogers at Washington. We like the future of Damon Williams, the young guy, but Will Rogers, the transfer, is going to be the starter there.
Yeah, and depending on how that season goes, I could see at a certain point Washington maybe deciding that it's Damon Williams' time, right? Could you see that too?
I mean, it just depends on how much Jed Fish wants to look to the future, or how much Jed Fish wants to try to get to 7 wins instead of 5 this year, or 8 wins instead of 6 or whatever. I and Jed,
they played a freshman last year at Arizona.
They did. Like we don't know, and it worked out like gangbusters. I mean, he helped create Noah Fafita, who might wind up on our most exciting quarterback matchup list this year because of what Jed Fish developed with him as a young guy. So we're very curious how that goes, but that's our list. I got to tell you, like, with all these transfers, not a ton of internal development, not many. It's a goofy Northern quarterback list this year, isn't it?
It's an odd list. Yeah. I think with some of the transfers, there's bankable, translatable production that I think you can feel pretty good about, but not with all of them. There's a lot of projection here that a lot of our teams are hoping to bank on or hoping to cash in on.
So then let's get to your Northern quarterback power rankings. We are going to do this on a regular basis on Kings of the North. Bill Landis is going to sit down and put on his quarterback thinking cap and come up with the top 10 quarterbacks in the North right now. So this is your list going into the season. We just ran through 28. Who are your best 10?
Yeah, at the top, I think is pretty straightforward. And I will say, like, this is mostly like statistically driven. I did take into account returning production on your offense if I felt like I needed a separator. And I also took into account whether or not your offensive coordinator from last year was returning, or if you were working with a new coordinator / in a new offense as well. And I will say, like, I didn't include like anybody who's totally brand new. So like Dylan Raiola is not my top 10 yet. And Max Brosmer is not my top 10 yet. Like I want to see some FBS production, like, or snaps before I start throwing guys in there. So anyway, number 1 is Dillon Gabriel, the quarterback at Oregon. I imagine anyone doing this exercise would probably have Dillon Gabriel number 1. Maybe you could have Shedeur Sanders number 2. This is not a draft conversation for me. This is how good are you going to be in the context of college football? And I think Dillon Gabriel is going to be better than Shedeur Sanders this year. Jalen Daniels, the quarterback from Kansas, was number 3. I had Will Howard from Ohio State number 4, which is definitely higher than I would have had him prior to camp starting. I have the benefit of being closer to Ohio State and being able to watch him practice there, and he's just been very impressive. And people have had good things to say about him, so I gave him a bump based on that. And then number 5 for me was Garrett Greene, who I really wanted to put him 1 at times. I was going through some of these stats, man, and I won't give you all of them. I'll just give you a few of them. This is only in the context of the North. Yards per attempt from last year, Garrett Greene was 5th. Turnover-worthy plays percentage in terms of having the lowest percentage of turnover-worthy plays, Garrett Greene was 5th. Average depth of target, Garrett Greene was 1st. Pressure to sack rate, how often you get sacked if teams pressure you, Garrett Greene was 1st. Breakaway yards, designed run yards, 15 yards or more down the field, Garrett Greene was 2nd. And then he's in an offense that is second in returning production too. So like he has everything around him. I think the kid's going to take off this year. I wanted to temper the expectations a little bit. So I have him fifth. I think I don't know that there's an argument to be made to put him ahead of Dillon, Gabriel, or Shedeur Sanders. I think you could put him third in this exercise if you really wanted to. And I wanted to, and I didn't. So I have him fifth.
Most big time throws, according to PFF, returning in college football, Garrett Greene won.
Yeah. I mean, he throws if you look at some of the numbers, like the intermediate passing is kind of bad. And the completion percentage overall is kind of low. Contributing to that is the fact that like more than a quarter, I think, of his passes are deep passes. So, 50% of your deep passes is good, but he needs to complete more than like 52% of his passes or whatever that was. So there's some holes you can poke in his game a little bit as a thrower, but some of those numbers, man, when you compare them, they're pretty solid. And there's, I think, strong reason to believe that he'll be better this year than he was last year.
I'm redoing my Heisman list. I'm redoing my Heisman list. What was I doing?
We'll see.
What?
We'll see.
What is the parlay of Garrett Greene to win the Heisman and West Virginia to win the national championship? Can we check that? Ooh. I'll check that for the betting show this week.
I need to know what the Tissue Index says about that.
25,000 to 1. Get on board.
That's right. All right. Continuing on with the list. Number 6, I had Cam Rising from Utah. Number 7, I had Rocco Becht from Iowa State. Number 8, I had Avery Johnson from Kansas State. Number 9, I had Aiden Childs from Michigan State. And I was pretty solid on those 9. I think at 10, there are probably a couple guys you could throw in there, especially if you're willing to put like a Dillon Raiola because you think he's just going to be really good this year in there. Drew Allar was somebody that I considered for sure for this spot. But I went with Kyle McCord from Syracuse, whose production last year, I think, paled in comparison to Ohio State quarterbacks that preceded him, but was still pretty good comparatively to like the rest of the North and not all that bad compared to the rest of the country. I get the standard at Ohio State is incredibly high, and what he did was not quite good enough, but I would have been good enough at a lot of other places. So I felt pretty good about him being 10, and I think he's another guy who's got a chance to improve his game this year.
I'm not arguing with anything on your list. The two guys to me that aren't on the list that would maybe have people wondering are Drew Allar at Penn State, who you mentioned, and Riley Leonard at Notre Dame.
Yeah, Drew Allar, like I said, was like kind of right there with Kyle McCord. Riley Leonard, like, it just hasn't thrown the ball enough for me to feel like, and like you can say the same thing about Aiden Childs, right? So like I get that it's not an ironclad argument. Riley Leonard just has to, I think, grow quite a bit to be what Notre Dame needs him to be. Incredible athlete. Also coming off of some injuries that seem to have held him back, but sounds like he's healthy now. So if he's healthy, he will be a top 10 mainstay on this list, I think, throughout the season. I just didn't go that way with the preseason list.
Okay. So we'll check in maybe weekly, but certainly multiple times during the course of the year with Bill Landis and his Northern quarterback power rankings. But right now it's time to check in with Ari Wasserman on Kings of the North right after this. Back on Kings of the North and joined by this most special of all special guests. He's your friend and ours, Ari Wasserman. Ari, man, it's great to have you back on Kings of the North.
It's just good to be, when you're here, you're family. You know what I mean? Like I just, every single time I see your guys' face, my mood is increased a little bit, or a lot of it sometimes. I am a frequent listener of the show. The one drawback coming on this show is that I will have one less thing to listen to next time you guys produce an episode, or maybe I'll listen it back. I'll juice the numbers a little bit. But I am really pumped to be here. You guys do an incredible show. I'm a loyal listener, and I'm flattered that you'd have me on.
So I came in with my podcast voice. I was like, that's welcome to the show, Ari Wasserman. I'm like, it's just Ari. What am I doing? It's just like we're sitting in the back of a car at McDonald's. What are we doing?
Yes, here? Please.
Mike, can we actually get the photo? Can we get the photo, Mike? I can't wait to show the photo because the three of us started podcasting or started doing this job together 10 years ago. 2014 was the first time that the three of us were together on the Cleveland.com beat. And that was the year that Ohio State won the national championship. So I don't know if that was coincidental, Bill, but do you feel like there it is? This is, if you're watching on the podcast and not watching on YouTube, you're missing the magic here. This is us at the national championship game. This is shortly before or after that Larry Culpepper from the Dr. Pepper ads came through and visited our video on this. But when you fellas, Bill, when you look at this photo, do you just think Like, boy, those were the days? Or do you think to yourself, oh my God, what was that?
I think that that shirt is still in my closet and doesn't fit me anymore. It barely fit me back. It barely fit me back then. Now that I'm looking at it, no, that was a fun time. That was my. You guys had been doing the Ohio State coverage for a year, so that was my first year working with y'all. And then like Ohio State went on this crazy run to the national championship, and yeah, those were fun times, fun shows, and it was nice to rub elbows with celebrities like Larry Culpepper.
Yeah. Ari, are you getting teared up looking at this photo, man?
Yeah, I mean, we're off camera right now, but I did have a tissue. It is funny that you said that about your shirt, Landis, because I was like, that North Face jacket is still hanging in my closet. One day to be able to fit in that thing again. It reminds me of that meme from Instagram that says, remember, don't you just wish you could go back and be as skinny as the last time you thought you were fat? You know, and that was... I showed up there in that North Face jacket to cover up whatever shirt I had underneath it, and it's in there, praying to see the light of day again. But it is definitely some of the fondest professional memories, or frankly memories at all. And a lot of the pictures that I have hanging behind me here are away games of pictures that I took with my phone of experiences that we all had together. So certainly hope that this is more frequent. I love being with you guys, and it's not going to feel normal until we get into a fight about something. So I'm pumped and ready to go. Fight. Yeah.
Hopefully about food. And by the way, just for everybody who's watching Ari and wondering like, we love Ari. I haven't heard him in a while. Like, what do you want to say about that, Ari?
Yeah, I'll just say that I'll be covering college football this year, and I'll be on a podcast this year. I appreciate the concern. I know people are sliding into Instagram DMs and Twitter, and somebody sent me a screenshot of like the Google history. I will be working. I'm not going to be announcing it here for a few more weeks, but I will be here. And when I arrive, you will know where to find me. So just stick with me. And thank you so much. And I just wanted to say that The Athletic was one of my favorite jobs in the entire history of the world, and very appreciative of the platform that they gave me, and super excited for the future. And I will be around.
And not here. For everybody who's like,
there's a lot of speculation.
Yeah, got so many questions about you coming. It was like, no, he's not coming here.
Yeah, so, I don't know that they would want that. Like, I feel like I'm a solar eclipse. It's nice to see me, but just every now and then.
Yeah,
sure. We can't afford Ari.
Yeah, that's
the bottom line. It's like we could throw our hat in the ring, but it's like I'm throwing my dog mentality hat in the ring for Ari, and Ari is
mentality. Yeah. I think you could.
So yeah.
We'll talk.
So let's get into our quarterback draft. We're going to draft this. It's based on like how excited we are to see these two quarterbacks on the field with each other, whatever that means. So it's sort of like the hype going into the game, the performance you might see in the game, the way you might be talking about this after the game. And I just want to clarify, do I have to pretend to be excited about Jackson Dart to participate in college football this year? Do I have to act like that? I can't wait to see Jackson Dart in the SEC. I feel like that's a compunction. Bill, it's like, Jackson Dart, he's my favorite Heisman dark horse. Jackson Dart would be the 9th best quarterback in the Big 12. I'm not drafting Jackson Dart. If anyone has like a huge Jackson Dart opinion to share, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Jackson Dart. Oh, he failed at USC and Lane Kiffin's going to make him a superstar. Come on, man. Sorry.
I kind of like Jackson Dart.
Bill's like, I'm not taking him for it.
Yeah, I think he's going to be pretty good. Like, I don't know. They returned their entire team from a 10-win team and like added some pretty nice pieces. I don't know.
Except their best player. They didn't return their best player who went to Ohio State. But other than that,
he's not on my list at all. I have a pre-draft list here, and he didn't make my list. So if that makes you feel better, it's a good olive branch. I tried to stay away from the South a little bit because I just didn't want to I didn't want to hear cram it. Yeah. So anyway, it is a national draft. Quinn Ewers and Carson Beck and Garrett Nussmeier. Oh, I can't wait for Garrett Nussmeier versus Jackson Dart's my number one pick. They're all available, but if you take them, you're going to get yelled at. Does one Southern team appear on your list?
I don't want to give that away.
Okay, all right. Well, the fact that it's a question.
My list is not all North. My list is not 100% North. It's like 92% North. Yeah. Bill, should we let Ari go first because he's our guest?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Let's let Ari go first.
Okay, so here's the thing I want to preface this by, because I'm trying to like figure out my draft strategy here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, are we trying to win the draft, or are we just trying to outline what we're excited about? Because like, I don't want to like not take the obvious ones first in the name of being interesting and then lose at the draft because of it.
Yeah, no, I think we want a college football fan to look at our draft and be like, man, that's a really interesting list. Maybe there's some picks in there I wouldn't have thought of, but I don't think you have to take something now just because you're trying to screw Landis because Landis wants to take a Jalen Daniels game.
Okay, because I was listening to your Heisman podcast before this, and when you were like, don't take my guy, don't take my guy, don't take my guy, I'm like, he's taking Avery Johnson. He's taking Avery Johnson. And then he took Jalen Daniels. I'm like, I would have taken Avery Johnson. So he's, I'm not going to go there, though. My first one, I guess I'll just start off with is Dillon Raiola versus Shedeur Sanders, September 7th.
Yeah. Like, look at you. Welcome to the North, brother.
We didn't talk about the identity of college football this year and the fact that there isn't just a clear and obvious star or face of the sport. And I think that goes a long way in defining both Heisman discussion and framing how entertaining the sport is in general. I think that this list is going to have a lot of guys that have a chance to do that. And I am just super juiced about the notion that Nebraska, a team that has always had, pretty good talent, a team that has been in a lot of one possession games that went the wrong way, having a star quarterback, like a guy that can go out and win a game for you. And we don't know what Dillon's going to be yet, but given what we know about his recruitment, his flirtation and commitment to Ohio State and everything that added up to it, like Nebraska got a person that not only can shift the paradigm of their program, but also can bring more eyeballs to the northern part of the country. Like imagine if he is who he is supposed to be, or who he could be, what that means for Northern football and what that means for Nebraska in general. And then of course, Shedeur Sanders and what Colorado is going to be against a team that, frankly matches up talent wise, or probably are the disadvantage in that game. Like that is an inherently interesting matchup to me. September 7th.
And the fact that it's like the unveiling, Landis, of Dillon Raiola, because they do play UTEP in the opener, but this is going to be the showcase against a guy who's a projected first round pick. Like that, the fact, if this was in week 9, right? But the fact that it's like, let's see what this Dillon Raiola thing is going to be makes this extra interesting, I think.
It's prime time too, right? If I'm recalling correctly.
Yes, I think it is. Yeah.
There'll be a ton of eyeballs on that game. Yeah, I kind of thought this was probably the obvious first pick. I don't know if you thought that way too, Doug. But if I had the first pick, this is where I was going for sure.
Okay.
I don't know. Like I'll watch Dillon Raiola in the first week, but America's not going to watch Dillon Raiola in the first week. So this is going to be their first exposure to that kid. And there's stuff with Colorado too. Like I think more of the Colorado intrigue is actually doesn't have much to do with Shedeur Sanders, but Shedeur is very talented. And I think will be one of the top 5 or 6 quarterbacks in college football, no doubt about it this year. So this is a big one. I don't remember very many matchups in like recent college football where you had kind of like established quarterback star like Shedeur against the next big freshman thing in college football. Like this is also a rarity.
Coming at a place where there's just a lot of inherent interest of what Colorado is going to be and what the next step looks like. So like this is on my list because of Dillon Raiola, no question about it. But that is a very intriguing thought process of like, I think that Colorado completely crapped the bed this offseason. That's my thought. I think that the build should look different. And people call me a Deion Sanders hater, but I really do think that if he were completely committed to the job the way that he's supposed to be in talent accumulation across the board, that Colorado would actually have a chance to be a really good program. I just don't think he's doing it. That said, if this is the Shedeur Sanders show versus the next guy who might be like a Heisman favorite a year from now, like I had a hard time with this in my entire list. A lot of mine are early in the season because how we always talked about in the past, that fans are always at the intersection between the present and the future, and how the future is always more interesting to them, which is why recruiting is so interesting. Like this is the apex of that. We get to actually see the future for the first time on a large stage. So like, as I was going down this list, it's like, well, yeah, of course I'd like to watch the Ohio State Michigan quarterbacks play each other at the end of November. Right. But like, that isn't as intriguing to me as the unveiling of something new.
Yeah. And that's why this is different than a best games draft, because Alex Orji, Will Howard is interesting, but actually that's the Michigan defense against the Ohio State defense, right? That's a huge game. But the quarterback matchup, because the other thing here that makes it interesting is Dillon Raiola might throw 3 picks and Shedeur Sanders might throw 5 touchdowns. And it might be like, oh, that's the difference between a guy who's done it and a guy who hasn't. That there's a way for this to be interesting in multiple ways. So I actually did not have this. I'm so proud. I'm so proud that you didn't pick Carson Beck versus Quinn Ewers. I'm so.
You think listen? The last time I came on the show, I ruffled your feathers. I don't remember how I did it. Like I know where I'm going. Come on. Like I've been around the block. I've been in a car with you before.
I'm so happy. So someone else, if you want a Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck as the number one pick, go somewhere else. Not getting it here.
Yeah.
Bill, I'll give you the number 2 pick, brother.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, thank you. So I think we have not really gotten into the state of the quarterback talent just yet, but I find myself a little kind of unmoved by the returning, like, quote unquote stars of the position. Not that they're bad.
I want to take my pick back. I want to take it back. I want to go number 2 now. I can hear you going.
My pick is
here we go again.
September 21st when those Vols and Nico Iamaleava go to Oklahoma and face Jackson
Hole.
That was going to be your pick?
That was my number 1 pick.
Yeah.
Bill, why is this? And this is the Ari Wasserman game. Stars matter. This is an explosion of quarterback stars. Why is this your pick, Landis?
It's the thing we've talked about before, right? It's the next wave of quarterbacks. It's this 2023 recruiting class, like, kind of finally stepping into the spotlight. And both these guys played in their bowl games last year. Nico was good. Jackson, not so much, but it's the number 2 quarterback in the 23 class against the number 4 quarterback in the 23 class. And there's a couple other guys in that group who will be stepping up into starting jobs this year too. And I just kind of feel like the position is ripe for a takeover by some of these younger guys who have not played yet. And this is an opportunity for one or both of Nico and Jackson Arnold to kind of take that spot, I think, fairly early on in the season for 2 teams too that I think could be pretty interesting in terms of the playoff race. I don't know that Tennessee or Oklahoma is necessarily front of mind for people as they're projecting playoff spots, but I think they're definitely there when you're thinking about, like, wild cards, dark horses, whatever you want to call them. And the only way they get there is if these quarterbacks are ready for it. So I want to see which of them is ready for it when they play in the 3rd week of September.
So just real quick, the top 4 quarterbacks in that class. Arch Manning was number 1. He's not starting this year.
Mm-hmm.
Nico was number 2. Dante Moore was number 3. He played at UCLA last year as a freshman, but transferred to Oregon. Jackson Arnold's number 4. So these are the 2 guys in the top 4 who are both playing. I picked Jackson Arnold to win the Heisman. That's how excited I am about him. And Nico, last year in the bowl game, you mentioned it, Bill. Nico Iamaleava was 12 of 19 for 151 yards, but they drubbed Iowa against, like, a good Iowa defense.
Mm-hmm.
They won 35-0. Jackson Arnold was 26 of 45 for 361 yards and with 3 picks in a loss to Arizona in that bowl game. But he started 3 of 8 with 2 interceptions. And so then after that, he was 23 of 37 with 2 touchdowns and an interception. He had never played before. Like, Dillon Gabriel opted out of the bowl game because he was transferred and they put Jackson Arnold in. So, like, Ari, like, this is your, did you ponder this at all? Because, like, Raiola emphasizes, let's get our eyeballs on a big time recruit. But this is 2 guys who do that, it's going to be in September and we don't know much about them yet.
Yeah, this is on my list. So I didn't want to come out of the gate with a quasi Southern game or a Southern game, but this is certainly, like, when you say the 5-star, like, there are going to be flare ups on my list as we continue through this of guys that I'm just intrigued by because of rating and whether or not they're going to be there. This is certainly there. And I know for a fact, like, especially in this part of the country, like, people are really fired up about Jackson Arnold. Even dating back to last year, there was a lot of talk about how, he stepped into that locker room and people, kind of, flocked to him from day one, even when he wasn't playing a year ago. So that's absolutely on the list. And I do wonder, if Oklahoma is a little bit further along than people are giving them credit for nationally too, with a lot of the pieces that they're bringing back. So yes, absolutely on my list, and certainly something that I'm going to be watching from a front row seat, hopefully.
So let's have this conversation now before I make my pick, because Landis, you have led us into the who are the best quarterbacks in college football right now? Who are the most exciting quarterbacks? I think this might be, in terms of returning guys that you're fired up about, the worst quarterback situation in college football since 2015. And it's hard to do this because it's hard to think like, oh, what did people think before a season? Right? As opposed to after the season, that, I don't know, a year ago, where people like, oh, I can't wait to see Michael Penix and Bo Nix, who both had good years the year before, but I don't know. I can't remember if people were jacked through the roof on this. But Here's my point, and I just made a little bit of a list, and I'll run through this as quickly as I can. Coming into last year, you had Caleb Williams back at quarterback as the reigning Heisman winner. Plus, you ended up having Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, Drake May, J.J. McCarthy that people were talking about, Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, Dillon Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Brady Cook, and Jordan Travis that people were excited about. I think that's more certainty than this year in terms of especially with Caleb at the top, right? The top of that list. There's no Caleb Williams at the quarterback position in college football this year. The year before, you had Bryce Young and CJ Stroud back. Bryce Young as the Heisman Trophy winner and CJ Stroud off a huge year. They were both huge recruits. The year before that, you had Bryce and CJ Stroud coming in. You had Sam Hartman. You had Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell, Will Levis, Kenny Pickett. Maybe you could argue that this is not much better than that. 2020 was the year of Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, both back after being huge recruits, near each other in high school on similar paths. Mac Jones jumped up that year. You had Spencer Rattler. People were excited about that year. 2019, you didn't know that Joe Burrow was necessarily going to be Joe Burrow, though you had Jalen Hurts, you had Justin Fields, and Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence had won the national championship as a true freshman in 2018, so he's back in 2019. Ian Book, Jake Fromm, Justin Herbert, Tua Tagovailoa. 2018, you had Kyler Murray, Tua Tagovailoa, who was coming off winning the national championship at halftime. Dwayne Haskins, Trevor Lawrence, again as a true freshman who probably was going to play. 2017, you had Lamar Jackson coming back as the reigning Heisman winner, along with Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, Josh Rosen. 2016, you had Deshaun Watson back, along with Patrick Mahomes was in there. You had Baker Mayfield. And then back to 2015, I found a list from Athlon Sports in 2015. They had the list of the best starting quarterbacks entering 2015. And they had Cardale Jones and JT Barrett as the co-starters at Ohio State as number one. And I was like, oh, okay. That was a little indication to me, Bill, of well, if that's where you thought it was, maybe. But when you hear at least at the top, who's the most exciting guy coming back this year? Is it Quinn Ewers? Is it Carson Beck? I feel like at least the tops of our list this year pales compared to almost everything going back to 2015.
I might push back on that. I don't. Some of those names you're running through, I think I like this situation a little more, especially like 2021. CJ Stroud and Bryce Young kind of emerging. That feels similar to me to Nico and Jackson Arnold emerging, but you also have Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers as returning first round talents on top of that, right? This actually seems pretty good to me. The combination of guys returning who have first round potential, and there's probably four maybe. With some of the young guys stepping up, I actually find kind of exciting. So there are definitely years in the past and in the recent past that I would definitely say were better. But I don't know that I'd go all the way back to 2015 when trying to find something that was worse than this. I think this is kind of okay.
What do you think of the quarterback talent this year, Ari?
I'm with you. That doesn't mean that in 6 weeks it might not be different, But going into the year, when you think about the two leaders of the Heisman odds right now, Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers, both have been very efficient and very good. But I wouldn't see excitement as their main trait, right? I don't know if they play in a way that you're I have to be in front of the TV when Quinn Ewers comes on television. Again, that can change, but I don't know right now. And if you don't, just not even a quarterback conversation, what about the entire sport? Who is the face of the sport? I know we've talked ad nauseum about the video game and all that stuff. I don't want to go down that road, but we didn't know who to put on the front. So what do? We found three people that are I know people are obsessed with Shedeur Sanders even. And I watch him play. I think he's fun. He's done some exciting things, but I don't feel the sizzle when I turn the TV on. I think the closest player that we have to that regard is Jalen Daniels, and he's been injured a lot of his career. So I think that we have an opportunity here in order to, kind of see and meet the new stars. But going into the season, I don't know that there's a lot of, no doubt about it. I mean, you're talking about Jackson Arnold and Nico. I mean, they've played one game. We don't even know if they're going to be good. I mean, they probably will be, but we don't know. When I think about,
we didn't know CJ and Bryce Young either. Is my point. I wouldn't hold that up as an example of what is definitely better when these guys have similar recruiting pedigrees. And I realize it's hard to separate what they became.
For sure.
Back then, right. But
when I think about going into the year, I think about proven entity. You know what I mean? Excitement, I think, is an all-time high. I've got a list of names that I cannot wait to watch. But in terms of star power, face of the sport, what people there's not like, especially coming off a year where Caleb Williams exists. It's like not even in the same hemisphere as what we had a year ago.
And I think that this is primarily for me, the idea, Bill, that we've talked about, that the third year quarterbacks are not at that moment that you normally get. Right.
So I think sizzle is a really good word for it, because I agree with that. There's not a lot of sizzle with those guys. I think maybe the two sizzliest of the returning guys are probably Jalen Daniels and Jalen Milroe. And those, I don't think either are as sizzly as Caleb Williams. Not even close.
Yeah. Okay. I might take all Big 12 matchups from now on, just because since I didn't get my Jackson Arnold Nico matchup, I'll take what I had number 2 on my list, and it is Week 8, West Virginia, Kansas State, Garrett, Greene, Avery Johnson. And I feel like Garrett, Greene, and Avery Johnson might define my view of this college football season. So, and they both can run, and they both can throw, and they both, the conversation that I had with Garrett Greene at Big 12 Media Days is sort of about being reckless in a good way. And I think that might apply to both of these guys this year. Garrett Greene has done it before. Avery Johnson hasn't. But I'm excited to see where both these guys are by the middle of the year. And I think we could let it loose, Ari, when we get to this game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting as we go down this list, guys, because we'll have quarterback matchups that are different matchups, but have a lot of the same players. Like Avery Johnson is on 3 of the 20 I've listed here.
Yeah.
It's possible too, like in a year from now, when you have the discussion we just got done having, that like Avery Johnson has a Johnny football like year and like wins the Heisman. Like 25-1, I think is a pretty attractive number for somebody that's got as much, dual threat ability as him. So I cannot wait. Now I've got so many here. I don't want to ruin it, but like I have Avery Johnson against other people because of the same reason why you just described. Like, I think he's going to be electric. And like the first person I played with the video game, the first game that I'm going to watch, I'll be lined up, dialed in to watch that game. I think he's going to be awesome this year. And frankly, I think like just thinking of having 2 stars, I'm going to take my next pick because I just want to do it. And then it goes into this, but Avery Johnson and Jalen Daniels, like the fact that those 2 guys are at the Kansas schools is sensational. And that is on October 26th. So it's a little bit later, I believe, than the game that you picked, Doug. If Avery Johnson hits and Jalen Daniels stays healthy, that game's going to be electric. And I cannot wait to watch that one for all the same reasons.
You had that on your list, right? You had that on your list, Landis.
I had both on my list. I was going to go Avery. The Kansas State game was going to be my next pick, because they're both exciting, right? But I think you add on, and it's more about the quarterbacks for this exercise. I understand it, but like add in the rivalry effect, I think, and like the stakes of that game too. You're talking late October between 2 teams in Kansas and Kansas State that are going to be, I think, in the thick of the Big 12 race with really exciting quarterbacks. That game does a little bit more for me than West Virginia, Kansas State does, but they were both on my list for sure. And now I don't know what I'm going to do next.
So I will say those are back-to-back, both on the road for Kansas State. So there's a lot of reasons to think Kansas State could win the Big 12. They have to go to West Virginia, and actually I take that back. The Kansas State game is at Kansas State, but they play them back-to-back. So it's like Kansas State is going to be, just like everybody in the Big 12, going through the fire of, we're a good team. We think we're good on both sides of the ball, but we're playing maniac quarterbacks who just might go crazy on us. And that's going to be the story of the whole Big 12 this year. So, Bill, you are next, and we've kneecapped you, which makes us feel good.
Yeah, you kneecapped me in a way that like I don't know that I feel super passionate about what I need to pick next. I've got like a handful of games I could pick. I will probably reach for one here that I do think is interesting, but maybe not like a super marquee kind of matchup. I'm going to go week 1, Texas A&M versus Notre Dame, Connor Weigman against Riley Leonard. I think is really interesting. I'll start with the Riley Leonard of it, right? It's like Riley Leonard moving on from Duke, going to a Notre Dame offense that's trying to find a way to just pack a little bit more of a punch than it has really in years, I think. And Riley Leonard, I think, is the guy that, if healthy, if he takes a step as a passer, can elevate that in a really meaningful way, especially in a Mike Denbrock offense. We saw what that did for Jaden Daniels. We saw what it did for Desmond Ridder at Cincinnati. Like, quarterbacks can thrive in that system. And maybe it would be too much to ask Riley Leonard to thrive in his first year in it, but I think he's got a chance. because he's a really good athlete. And I just like this matchup too as kind of a tone setter for both quarterbacks, right? People want to see a lot from Conner Weigman this year. Like he started off really well last year, right? And then he got hurt and kind of missed the rest of that season, but it was incredibly high ceiling there too. I think it's two quarterbacks that people look at from a tools perspective and think to themselves, like, both these guys might have it. Both have not really had the opportunity to show it. And they're going to be on a pretty big stage in the first week of the season.
That was on your list, Ari?
Yes, for sure. I also love, and I know this is a quarterback discussion, but it's like, what is A&M? Like, does anybody know like what A&M is? Like, maybe they're a team that wins 10 games because they just had some functional coaching infused into their program with a lot of talent, or maybe they're just another 5 loss team like they are every year. I don't know, but like Conner Weigman is somebody that, you know, when you look at the quarterback position in the draft boards, that could go from like relatively unknown to a top round pick. And it's like the reveal of that, you know, that to me is super fascinating. And I think you can make the case for Riley Leonard that he is, or could be, one of the most efficient quarterbacks in college football this year, especially considering the fact that I actually think that Notre Dame is going to go undefeated this year. And I don't know if that's crazy or not, but like their defense is nasty. They've got multiple All-Americans in their secondary. Chris Mitchell, the receiver transfer that they brought in, is an explosive player that over 1,000 yards last year. If like he can be healthy and run the ball efficiently, like then maybe Notre Dame with kind of a punch against what's a pretty crappy schedule when you look at it. Like I don't really know what the for sure loss is there. Their toughest game is right out of the gate, and that's a hell of a quarterback matchup.
I think these are, if you want to entertain the possibility of someone kind of coming from the back of the pack to surge past Shedeur and Quinn and Carson Beck to be the first pick taken as a quarterback, it's one of these two guys. Right. I don't know. I guess you could throw Jackson Dart into that conversation, but I think
no, you can't. I
was going to say, are you sure?
I wouldn't. I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't. But I think like when you think about sort of like the raw passing ability of Conner Weigman and the athletic profile of Riley Leonard, I think it's either one of these guys.
And Conner Weigman's athletic profile is pretty insane too. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the fact that he was like a potential Major League Baseball prospect and stuff, like he is exactly what you want at the quarterback position at a place that, you know, hasn't really had crazy quarterback production.
And this is where college football is. It's Duke's quarterback from last year versus Duke's coach from last year. Riley Leonard and Mike Elko. And Texas A&M and Notre Dame were like, come save us, Blue Devils. And it's not Mike Krzyzewski. Is that whack? It's like Riley Leonard and Mike Elko rebuilt Duke football. And now they're facing off in a gazillion-dollar game.
But don't feel bad if you're Duke football. You got a pretty exciting signal caller there yourself that I can't wait to watch.
Yeah.
No, feel bad if you're Texas A&M and Notre Dame and you're like, what do we do? And it's like, I don't know. Can we
Duke?
Great plan, everybody. This is actually my pick is going to be a Landis type of game. And I thought you might be going here. I'm going to take
Army Navy.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, are we going 1 AA here or what?
I'm going to take a week 6 game. Michigan State, Oregon. Aiden Childs versus Dillon Gabriel. And also Jonathan Smith, the Oregon State coach, who knows Oregon, who knows how Oregon, even though Dillon Gabriel wasn't at Oregon last year, who knows how they want to play. It's on a Friday night at Oregon. That you thought Aiden Childs was going to be like the next guy up in this rivalry for Oregon State versus Oregon. Instead, they're facing each other as Big Ten foes. So, Bill, we're excited about Aiden Childs. I think, you know, like I certainly am probably taking Dillon Gabriel for granted this year. He might set the record for like the most everything in college football history. And I'm assuming he's going to be not quite as good as Bo Nix, but I think he probably deserves to be somewhere on this list. And I like the story of Aiden Childs going to play in Oregon for this game.
That's a good pick. I actually overlooked this one. I have a different Aiden Childs game on my board. But this one probably makes more sense. Yeah. That's like part of the narrative thing, I think, that we discussed at the beginning of the show is interesting there. But I think there's a chance that Dillon Gabriel is better than Bo Nix. I don't know that I'd bet on it right now, but
like a better football player or better
just like has a better season, like not a better draft prospect, but has a better season in this offense than Bo Nix has had either of the last 2 years.
Where are you on Dillon Gabriel, Ari?
I feel like I have like mixed emotions about it because on one hand, I do question whether Dillon Gabriel would be on Oregon's football team right now if Jackson Arnold wasn't who he was or waiting in the wings. So like that always kind of negs somebody maybe unfairly in my mind of like, You're not at the place that you were because somebody awesome is behind you. And then on the other hand, it's like you look at the receiver core at Oregon. It's like, who wouldn't be good there? And you know, they have done a good job historically of putting their quarterbacks in position to, you know, make plays, get the ball out quickly, get it to people who have explosive, you know, after the catch playmaking ability. Like, I don't know that I'm in love with him as a quarterback, but I'm in love with his situation. And I think his situation a lot of times in college football is a lot more important than maybe even who you are. So like, I would buy like the Heisman odds, like you guys are talking about 7-1. Like I think that is a fair number and probably the right way to view it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ari, you're up next with pick 7.
Okay, so I have a lot of names on here that you guys have already talked about, but I'm going to go in a different direction. I'm going to go August 31st, Cam Ward versus Graham Mertz. This might be kind of a weird thought process for you guys because we kind of know what Graham Mertz is, although I think that he's been unnecessarily hated on. Like, I thought he had a pretty productive
He was
year.
good last year. I thought he was pretty good last year. Yeah.
But
I'm
like,
going to hate on him.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Don't hate on him. Hate on Paul Christ.
If Graham Mertz stinks, then that opens up Pandora's box of like what's ahead too. Like, I think that like the compelling nature of like the guidelines for this was to pick a quarterback matchup that will have you at the edge of your seat because it's a drama, it's interesting, it's exciting. Miami trying to get back, spending a bunch of money in the offseason to fill the roster. Like, is Mario Cristobal going to actually get a team to win 10 games, or is it going to be a complete dumpster fire, like forgetting to take a kneel at the end of a football game? And then on the other hand, like the other coach is putting his future quite literally in the hands of a guy who people think stinks and has a 5-star freshman right behind him, like from a quarterback, like right out of the gate. Like, whoever loses this game, the fan base might like set couches on fire. Like, there is no, this is the most.
You guys talked about this?
No.
Landis had a whole take on this. You guys are of one mind about wanting to set that the state of Florida is going to be on fire one way or the other after this game. You two are aligned.
I mean, but if you think about where both fan bases are, like Miami is just at the apex of like, can we finally win? We have what we need. Can we finally do it? And like Florida is probably got the hardest schedule in college football this year. And like, I think it's a 3-point spread and they have a lot of high hopes at a home game. Like, there's no way to like rationalize losing this game on either side.
So this is, again, I would like to play a game that we could do a show on the craziest relationships asking people to come save programs. It is the state of Florida. You walk out of your football building and you trip over excellent high school football players. And we are in a position where in the first week of the season, the former Wisconsin quarterback versus the former Washington State quarterback is determining the fates of 2 Florida programs. Bill, what is wrong with the people down there? How did that state get to the, well, I don't know. Like, God bless you. And I will go through like sometimes the North, we get it. When the North needs a little bit of saving, hey, you got to go get some guys from the South. It's like, hey, Jeremiah Smith, you want to come North? The North has to do that. When the South, the chest thumping South is like, what do you think we should do? It's like, I don't know. Should we go get a guy from Pullman or Madison? It's like, well, how does that happen? I will mock them incessantly, Bill, for having to do that.
But that's all part of the interesting part of it.
No, it's a great pick, but also Florida football can cram it until they can't cram it no more. It's ridiculous.
Can anybody off the top of their head name the best Florida high school quarterback that became a good college quarterback they can remember?
Tim Tebow? I don't know.
Like, Tim Tebow was the first, but that's a long time ago.
And also, by the way, Florida State's quarterback is Oregon State's quarterback from last year. So it's all North in the state of Florida. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, like DJ's not from Florida. Cam Ward is from Texas, I think. DJ Lagway's from Texas, right? It's not like, I don't know the last one. Who's like the last dude quarterback from Florida?
Sounds like a discussion for another show to have. I just assume they all stink.
Like, I'm trying to think of like who the best star from Florida is, and there's nobody's coming to my mind right now.
I'm just like looking through the 23 class we were talking about earlier because I had it on my screen, and I'm down to here we go, 19th quarterback in the class. Austin Simmons from Moorhaven, Florida, signed with Ole Miss. in 2023.
The next Jackson Dart, I heard that guy's going to be. So, by the way, Cam Ward in his last 8 games last year at Washington State went 1-7. He threw 12 touchdowns against 7 interceptions, and then went on the market. And everybody was like, "Should we give him $6 million in NIL or $7 million in NIL?" Good luck, Miami.
I just Googled Landis, just the best high school quarterbacks from Florida ever, and there's a lot of like Geno Smith and Tommy Frazier and Tim Tebow and Chris Collingsworth. Like, there's not a lot of modern. That's an interesting story.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess everyone just plays receiver. You're a crazy athlete.
Yeah, no, nobody wants to be quarterback down there. All right, so that's a Miami, Florida. Both Bill and Ari will be watching this one, just watching football programs catch on fire.
I'm going to this game. Like, and if you want to play another game at the end, but like picking which game you would want to be at before the season starts based on like your preconceived notions of like how things are going to go. This would be in my top 3 of games I would want to see in person. And then the other one is Texas and A&M. That one, but like that is how high I am on just the dumpster fire that is ensuing. This game.
Yeah. All right. So Ari went with a good chaos pick there at 7. Bill, what are you taking at 8?
I'm going to take a game where I think one guy is very exciting and one guy I think might be on the short list of like most intriguing quarterbacks in college football this year, and that is going to be the week 1 banger, West Virginia against Penn State.
Let's do it.
Garrett Greene and Drew Allar, and I think is Garrett Greene kind of taking a step that maybe just Doug and I are expecting him to take. To be honest, I don't know how many people are talking about Garrett Greene the way
there's a hype machine going there. There's a hype machine.
I feel like there's. Okay,
it's going here. We just don't know if we're in a bubble or not. But
I'm glad to have that perspective, Ari. Thank you. So there's that, and then there's Drew Allar in this new Andy Kotelnicki offense, and whether or not he can live up to the expectations that I don't think he lived up to next year. And I think there's an opportunity where we see maybe a different version of Drew Allar where he runs a little more. I thought there were times toward the end of last season where he ran and looked pretty effective doing so. He's obviously a big kid who I think could run through some tackles and help create some stuff that way. I just want to see like Drew Allar kind of get unleashed, for better or for worse, whatever that might look like. I just think you kind of need to let this kid cook and see how he can grow. And I'll have to do it on the road against a West Virginia team that has an okay defense. I think it's not going to be the best defense Penn State plays all year, but I think it'll be a fairly good barometer of where Drew Allar is and where he's going this year. And then same for Garrett Greene against a very good Penn State defense. Like that actually might be the best defense that Garrett Greene sees all year playing in the opener against Penn State with Tom Allen coordinating it. So it's good. It'll be a good kind of starting point for both quarterbacks to see whether or not we're a little too far out over our skis with Garrett Greene and whether or not whether we're giving Drew Allar kind of enough credit for the growth he might have made this offseason.
And I'll be at this game. I'm excited for this one. We are excited about Garrett Greene, but this is also, I think, like Shedeur Sanders, Dillon, Raiola, you can see it going multiple ways. And what if it's that, okay, West Virginia, like Garrett Greene still missed some throws, and Drew Allar in the Andy Kotelnicki offense, they're going to let him do some stuff down the field, and holy moly, guys are running open, and Drew Allar looks like a first-round pick. I think that, Ari, like that's on the board, I think, to go either way, where Garrett Greene dominates this game, where Drew Allar dominates this game, where there's 2 high-level quarterback plays, or where both guys are like, oh, actually, I'm not sure about either of these guys. I think that's the multifaceted possibilities here make this a good pick.
This was going to be my pick, but I didn't want to do consecutive picks where one of my quarterbacks was on the list of the game that you just picked. But this is right here. That's who I would have gone next. And also too, just the entire intrigue of what Penn State is going to do from a philosophical level offensively with a new offensive coordinator kind of builds into the excitement of like, is Drew Allar going to be who we thought he was, become a first round pick, or is he just going to be kind of good? Because it's like Penn State has had some really, really good college players over the years. We've covered a lot of games together where Penn State's like Trace McSorley's of the world, like really did a good job of torching the Ohio State defense. It's like, is Drew Allar going to be a legitimate NFL player? Like, is he going to be Christian Hackenberg, but like all the way through? Or is it just going to be year one Christian Hackenberg? I don't know. I really do think that Drew Allar, I was surprised to see that he was not on your top 10 quarterbacks of the North list. I think we're going to find out very early on into the year whether or not he should have been on that list.
Yeah, we definitely will. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to take a Jackson Arnold game since I didn't get him before, and I'll take Jackson Arnold Quinn Ewers in Red River in week 7. And again, this is a guy on the way up, like legit guy that we feel like we know about. And by midseason, I think this could be a gigantic eyeball game because Texas could have some huge wins by here. I don't want to completely give away everything I think about Oklahoma this year. I think Oklahoma could be undefeated going into this game. And I think this has a chance to be a huge talker, Ari, if Jackson Arnold has already begun to ascend and if Quinn Ewers is kind of doing his thing. So that's week 7.
Yeah, absolutely. That game is bananas every year, no matter what or who's playing in it. I don't know why, but it is just one of those deals where it's just doesn't matter what the spread is. It always feels like it's 51-49. Like if those guys are both humming and making plays, like that could be. I think you could make the case, Doug, that we look back at the season and that could be the premier showcase of quarterback play of the entire year. So I really like that pick.
Yeah, it's a good pick.
And I would appreciate it if I could get to a pick without you having one of the guys on the list because I can't.
Yeah.
We're
double up. It's okay.
No, I don't want to double up. I'm going to do something a little bit different. The risk here is doubling up and being interesting or picking something. I'm just going to pick Dillon, Gabriel, and Will Howard. Like, what are we doing here? Like, this is the game of the year. We already talked a lot about Dillon Gabriel, but I would be remiss to come on the show and not have a discussion for a minute about Will Howard, what the expectations are for him, and like whether or not like this is a legitimate Heisman finalist type player. Like when you start talking about the backfield that they have, I know the offensive line at Ohio State is the one thing that seems to be coming together, but you could make questions about the receiving core. Like you put Will Howard, a guy who was really fun to watch at K-State, in an offense that is this loaded. How could I possibly say what I said about Dillon Gabriel being in the perfect position and then like not acknowledge that Will Howard is in the same exact spot? And then they play on the road in a first-year Big Ten game at a place that Ohio State hasn't been in maybe ever. Like this game is in the top 3 games in general of ones that I would want to go to this year. And then you take into effect that you have 2 first-year guys that could be off to really fast starts meeting in the middle of October in a game that's going to define whether or not either of those teams win the Big Ten. Like that's big boy quarterback play, show up or show out type of moment. And I think we're going to find out a lot about both of those guys on that day and what will absolutely be what determines playoff seeding.
Yeah. I think like it's so fascinating to me that Dillon Gabriel and Will Howard both, I think were reasonably sort of, I don't want to say urged, but like, the young guy behind them, I think should be playing at both spots. Right. But I also think, but both of them also landed in places that I think they're just going to be far better off than they would have otherwise. Right. It's both. We've talked a lot about the Will Howard situation on our Ohio State show and how I think like a workout for both sides, Kansas State and Ohio State. I think the same thing is true of Oregon and Oklahoma. But like Will Howard against Dillon Gabriel, I think could be like, okay, which one of you guys is going to be the best quarterback in the Big Ten this year?
Yeah.
The thing I don't know about this is like, if you're doing the hype video for this game, by the time they get here, I think this game is Ryan Day versus Dan Lanning. I think this game might be Emeka Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith versus Tez Johnson and Evan Stewart.
Yeah.
I think this might be Jordan James versus Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. I think it might be JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer as edge guys versus Josh Connerly and a Johnny Cornelius as the tackles. I just don't know where the quarterback matchup is on the hype list for this game. And I don't know how important the quarterbacks are to the teams winning. That is it more about whether Oregon can block Ohio State? Is it more about whether Ohio State can run the ball on Oregon? Is it more about whether one of the receivers makes a ridiculous catch regardless of what kind of throw it was? Is it more about that it used to be Ryan Day versus Lincoln Riley and now it's Ryan Day versus Dan Lanning for superiority, not just in the Big Ten, but maybe nationally among that age of head coaches? And so like that's why everything about this game is huge. But I just was, as I made my list, I was asking myself how much of this is a quarterback matchup or not. But I also think that's because I am probably underestimating both these quarterbacks because they're old they're simultaneously old and new in a way that is sort of less interesting all the way around. That if you've had a guy forever at your program and you love him, that's one thing. If you have a guy who's never played at all, that's super interesting. And these guys have both played a ton, but not at their schools. So then I don't know what to do with them.
There is a certain phenomenon, and like as Bill and I, our friendship has evolved a little bit, but like I am into buying football cards now because of him. And a large part of this is because it's like prospecting. And like we're trying to talk about like what guys would you buy college cards of? And there is a phenomenon of certain guys who have just left and had a change of scenery and completely reinvented themselves in their new place. And it's like Will Howard is a good player. Dillon Gabriel is a good player. Are either one of these two players in 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks going to be completely unrecognizable to the people that they were? Because the second you absorb Oregon as who you are, the second you absorb Ohio State, like all the Kansas State stuff that we remember about Will Howard is going out the window and he becomes Ohio State's quarterback. And if he's a star and he's productive, like I just think that we might be viewing Will Howard incredibly differently by this game than we do right now, because we haven't seen it in a game yet all together. I mean, if he's throwing it to Jeremiah Smith or Emeka Egbuka and they're going up and making plays, like, you know how the quarterback position absorbs that success. Like it's going to be a huge deal by then, I think.
Yeah, I think I don't know that kind of transformation is possible for Dillon Gabriel, but I think it's definitely possible for Will Howard. And Will Howard too, by the Oregon game, will have faced a pretty solid test play against Iowa the week before. I think it's the week before. So like if Will plays well against Iowa and Ohio State wins that game, I think you're right, Doug, about all like right now. All of the build up for that game is based off the things that you said, but I think it could switch to the quarterbacks by the time we get there.
Like, could Will Howard be Bo Nix?
Or Michael Penix, or Joe Burrow, or Jaden Daniels, or like all these guys who have gone somewhere else and succeeded. I don't know. Like Bo, I don't know. Bo Nix is like tearing it up at NFL training camps right now, right? I mean, I don't, because Bo Nix, Auburn Bo Nix was not, to your point, or it was not Oregon Bo Nix. Auburn was kind of like, yeah, Bo Nix. I don't know. He played a lot. He was okay, right?
And now he's throwing studies in the preseason.
Yeah. So the absorption, I love the word absorb when it comes to college football. We love it.
You used to say that all the time 10 years ago, and now I say it. There's a lot of things that I do that I've unintentionally realized are your fault, which is like including Jalen Milroe on my Heisman ballot last year was your fault. People got really mad at me about that, but it is your fault.
I would imagine most of the things are things that you get yelled at for now. It's like, if you're like, that actually was Doug, you just like yell at him instead.
You taught me how to vote for the Heisman. I put Jalen Milroe on the Heisman ballot because of like, you could not tell the story of last year without him. And everyone's like, why the hell did you not put the Heisman winner on your ballot at all? And I was like, because his team wasn't very good. And I was like, it's not the story of the season. You can forget all about Jaden Daniels.
I will back you 1,000% on that argument. Forgettable. Like, let's come back in 15 years and be like, oh man, remember that Heisman year with Jaden Daniels? Ooh. Wait, remember that year that Jackson Dart won the Heisman? Oh, it was so exciting. I loved it. God, get ready. Frickin' South. All right, Bill, you're up.
Okay. I'm going to pick a potentially weird one. I'm curious if this got on either of your radars. It's week 2, September 7th. It's Utah against Baylor. It is Cam Rising against DeQuan Finn.
Look at you respecting the Northern pedigree of the great Toledo quarterback.
Were you not waiting for the Bill Landis, like, just, curveball? That
I got another. Yeah. I got another one.
Never changed, Allaby. Never changed.
I got another one that I might do. But look, it's Cam Rising. I think Utah opens with Southern Utah on Thursday night or Friday night, and it's like Cam Rising will be back on the field. It'll be good to see him just back on the field generally. But this is Cam Rising against a team with a pulse. I actually think Baylor has a potential to be a little bit of a surprise team this year, or a utter catastrophe. I can kind of go either way. But it's not a horrible team that Cam Rising will be playing against. I think it'll be the first test of like, is Cam Rising the Cam Rising we remember? And then it's DeQuan Finn, interesting guy, like former MAC MVP, transferring up to the power conference level. He is from Detroit, so he's a son of the North that gives him bonus points in this matchup for me. I think the potential to be one of the more exciting quarterbacks in the country this year. Was incredibly productive at the MAC level. I know this is a drastic step up to go do it in the Big 12, but We've seen guys do it before. I think DeQuan Finn could potentially do it. And this is a good test for him too, against a Utah defense that'll probably be among the best defenses he's faced in his entire career. And he played Ohio State a couple of years ago. But he played Ohio State a couple of years ago in a game where it was like not competitive and he can just sort of like play like a crazy person to make a few wild plays. This game could be competitive against a really good defense in Utah. And he'll have to show that he has the stuff that was deserving of him kind of getting elevated to the power conference level. So I think this is actually a very compelling quarterback matchup that probably is not on the radar for a lot of people.
I love it. And I thought DeQuan Finn was not scared in that game, which is there's a lot of players and coaches and teams that come into a place like Ohio Stadium and they play scared and they take themselves out of the game. And DeQuan Finn at least tried. And after that game, Jim Knowles, as the Ohio State defensive coordinator, was like, okay, we need to figure some things out because DeQuan Finn burned us. And then all of the things that DeQuan Finn burned Ohio State with, J.J. McCarthy burned Ohio State with 2 months later. And so they're like, okay, well, you didn't figure it out. But like, I respect DeQuan. I was so mad DeQuan Finn went south. The fact that a Big Ten school, like why DeQuan Finn is not like the fact that Max Brosmer made it to the Big Ten, but DeQuan Finn didn't. No offense to Max Brosmer. It's like, what are you doing, Big Ten? How they didn't get this guy. So I like it.
I wanted him to go to Wisconsin.
Oh, I would have taken that.
And then I wouldn't have to watch Tyler Van Dyke, which would be great.
Okay. Can you be supportive of the Badgers, please? Just a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to take another Big 12 matchup because I do think, and I'm just so curious if we're going to get to a point where neither Jalen Milroe nor Carson Beck appears on this list. I would like to remind you, Landis, that you did pick Jalen Milroe to win the Heisman. So before you get to your final pick and take the thing that I think you want to take, that I also want to take, I would going to make fun of you if you pick Jalen Milroe to win the Heisman, but you're like, I don't want to watch him the whole year.
I have a pick left, man. You know what I'm going to do.
I'm warning you.
Okay.
I'll take Noah Fafita versus Shedeur Sanders. I'll take Arizona versus Colorado in week 8. Again, like the Big 12 is bonkers. So it's just trying to match these guys up. Noah Fafita is also going to play Jalen Daniels. He's also going to play Avery Johnson. I didn't know if I wanted to make a third Avery Johnson pick here, but I do think these are two high level throwers of the football. So on my gigantic list of Big 12 games, I'll take Arizona, Colorado. Ari, do you have any interest in this one?
It's on my list. And like you said, there's like a round robin of Avery Johnson. It's just like a little constellation of Avery Johnson games against other Big 12 quarterbacks. Yeah, I love it. I can't wait. I mean, honestly, a lot of my buddies that I went to college with at U of A are really fired up about this. And I do get a kick out of atypical teams that aren't typically in a place of excitement being excited. Now, I don't know if they're nearly as excited as they would have been had their coach not left for Washington and kept the roster intact. But I think you could make the case that Noah Fafita and T-Mac are one of the 5 best wide receiver quarterback combos in the entire country. So, I do love the amount of love that we're giving Avery Johnson because I think it's going to be great. And I want to I don't remember where I was in my career. I did not see Johnny Football coming. Like, it would be cool to see Avery Johnson coming because, like, I don't know that the random college football fan who shows up on Saturday and watches games knows who he is yet. Like, to like be on the front end of that would be fun.
You won the Pop-Tart Bowl, man. What are you talking about?
Yeah, no, I know. I should have. The Pop-Tart. How could you be noticed at the Pop-Tart Bowl when the only thing everybody wanted to talk about? Can I talk about how little I care about the Pop-Tart guy? Like, everybody on Twitter is like, oh, this is so funny. This is amazing. Sorry about the rant. This is a Doug rant. I could not give a crap about the Pop-Tart. And I felt like alienated on my own podcast and with my coworkers. I was afraid to admit
there
it.
There are a lot of athletic people that like that Pop-Tart.
Yeah, and they were like tweeting about it all the time. And it's like, yeah, it's funny, but like, is it worth a 3-day conversation? That said, the Pop-Tart guy got way more attention than Avery did.
Yeah, he did.
Wouldn't
also,
that
Pop-Tart didn't look like it tasted good. It looked like crap. I don't want to eat that Pop-Tart.
No, but we look back at that bowl game, and it was the unveiling of a future Heisman winner and dominant NFL quarterback. And you're going to be right, Ari. Like, it's going to be a documentary about everybody was thinking about the pastry, but they didn't realize the history. Yeah. And then they'll go right to your clip of like, I wanted to talk about football. Everybody else wanted to talk about delicious fruit filling.
Now, they had my attention for a second when they said that the Pop-Tart was going to be edible. Like, I thought they were going to eat the mascot, and like that would have been a whole new different, like, to watch them devour the person in the suit would have been an interesting thought. But no, I think that was way overblown, and I really am excited about the quarterback who played in the game. So I love that pick.
I bet you could get Avery Johnson, like a shot of like Avery Johnson admit like crying, being like feeling like he got overshadowed by the Pop-Tart and how it motivated him. Maybe the Pop-Tart's going to be the driving force of this Heisman campaign. I will be never be overshadowed by breakfast food again.
It's just Avery Johnson. You see the image of the Pop-Tart guy coming out of the toaster, like, it's like, all right, guys, we get it. Like, it was good branding. Good for them.
All right. Last pick for you, Ari.
Okay, I can't believe we're already here at the end, but I'm just going to do what I thought would be a layup and an early pick that I was going to let one of you guys do, and you just never got to it. But like, are we going to get through the Kings of the North quarterback draft without talking about Alex Orji? Like the notion of
I was planning on it. Yeah.
Okay,
you were how interested you are. I mean,
well, here's the thing: I'm not coming at this as Michigan's quarterback is awesome. I'm like, I don't know what Michigan's quarterback is or who he is. Like, going against Quinn Ewers in a game where you're defending national champions, you're going to be unveiling a new quarterback and basically an entire new, they have a lot of pieces left, but an entire new staff and all those things. Like, who is Michigan's quarterback? How good is he going to be? How is he going to perform against a team that we anticipate is going to make the playoff at home? And is this going to be the reveal of a Michigan team that we have to take seriously as a Big Ten contender? Like, you know how much it matters how good your quarterback is. And I know that, like, I've had mixed feelings on how good I thought JJ McCarthy was at college or how much they asked him to do. But like, I don't feel like I personally have a very good feel of who Michigan's quarterback is, his strengths, what he's going to do well, how much they're going to ask him to do, how much they're going to play like they did last year. Like, the new Michigan, like Michigan's whole thing last year with the national title run and all the stuff and the stars and the cheating and all that stuff has taken up so much of the Michigan discussion, and rightfully so, during the offseason. It's like, but we're talking about Ohio State on this channel a lot. And it's like, in the atmosphere of Ohio State, like Michigan's presence and how good they actually are is a huge important piece to that. And I don't really feel like I know how good they are. I know they have good players at some key spots, but like, I don't know if Alex Orji walked by me in the grocery store, I wouldn't be able to recognize him. Like, that's how little I know about their quarterback position right now.
I guess the question is, will we have a definitive answer after this game? Because I think maybe, again, Michigan's going to be defined by its defense. It's going to be defined by its run game, by how good its offensive line is. I also think maybe Michigan could get its doors blown off by Texas. And it might just be because, well, whoever the quarterback was, they were going to be inexperienced. Quinn Ewers has been around the block. Texas is one of the best 4 teams in the country, and Michigan still might be good. And they maybe still have quarterback stuff to figure out. I don't know that we'll get an answer. Now, if Alex Orji or whoever the Michigan quarterback is lights up Texas, then let's go. Then it's super interesting. There's a part of me that thinks, Bill, I don't know. Maybe Michigan does not get good quarterback play this day. Michigan loses, but also that doesn't tell us a ton about Michigan.
Yeah, I guess I could see that. I'm not convinced that Michigan's going to get good quarterback play like at any point this season. I think they're going to have to work around it in a very similar fashion to some of Jim Harbaugh's early teams, right? Which is, they were found ways to be successful.
Yeah, for sure.
Sort of with that dynamic, but I find Alex Orji fascinating because like he's a total unknown. Like I agree with that, Ari. It'll be nice to watch him throw a pass that's like not a trick play because I think that's all he's done to this point in his career. But I don't know that I'm very much looking forward to Michigan, Texas.
Do you know the spread of the game off the top of your head?
I would say Texas by 13.5.
It's 3. So
what?
Like if you,
that's crazy.
3? It was 3. Yeah. Yeah. The last time I looked, it was 3. I'm trying to look at this.
Hey Siri, bring up gambling site. Sorry.
3?
3? Does that seem right?
I swear to God, that's what it was. I'm looking it up right now. Again, it's not. Last one I saw was 3, and I was talking about it with a bunch of Texas people. And the reason why is because if you pay attention to Texas from a gambling standpoint in any way, they're 3.5 point favorites all the time against crappy Big 12 teams in the past. Like they are always a team that has played down for the most part to their opponent. Now, this is the new Texas team that made the playoff last year, but like going to Ann Arbor, like
I don't know that I would lay 14 points if I were. I mean, I think that this game might be closer than people think it's going to be, especially considering the fact that Michigan has some really important pieces at places that could hurt Texas. I don't know. Like,
and
I
the
think
Texas
this game's in
running back injuries, right? Texas running back injuries.
Yeah, Texas running back injuries do hurt.
If that game's close, then it's like 17-14. I don't want to watch that quarterback matchup.
Yeah, I don't know. All I know is I know nothing right now, and this game might help me learn something that's intriguing to me, especially about a team that we're going to be talking a hell of a lot about in the next few months. I am comfortable with my pick, and it's not an Alex Orgy thing; it's a Michigan quarterback thing.
Yeah, I get it. I'm not making fun of your pick because I'm about to make a pick that's going to get made fun of.
Can't wait.
It's a good pick. Yeah.
3.5. 3.5.
Yep, you found it. Yeah, I'm not crazy.
Am I just terrible at guessing betting lines that I was 10 points off? Or are they terrible at making betting lines? That's crazy to me.
Sounds like you got to take a trip out to Vegas and lay some cheddar on it.
And the Michigan defense is going to be good. So great. All right, let's go, Michigan. Let's do your thing. All right, Bill, your pick.
Yeah. Okay, so Doug, you're on to something. Like I think I need to pick a Jalen Milroe game. You can have Jalen Milroe versus Carson Beck. You can have
because you're taking Jalen Milroe. You can have him versus Jackson Dart. Take Jackson.
You can have them. They don't play each other. You can have Jalen Milroe
what
against
a travesty
Nico.
for college football.
You can have Jalen Milroe against Brady Cook. You can have Jalen Milroe against Garrett Nussmeier, or you can have Jalen Milroe against Jackson Arnold. Because I'm taking Jalen Milroe versus Byron Brown, Alabama and South Florida. Because Byron Brown,
I don't know who that is.
Dog. You don't know. You should know who he is.
What? Let me know when two Florida moves north of the Mason-Dixon line, and then I'll start paying attention.
Two quarterbacks in college football last year had 3,000 passing yards and 800 rushing yards. One of them won the Heisman, and one of them was Byron Brown. He's a stud. Can South Florida protect him enough for him to be a stud against Alabama? Very fair question that I don't know the answer to. It's probably no. I think South Florida has a chance to be a decent American Athletic Conference team this year. But it's just two freaky athletic quarterbacks in the same game. So give me that game.
You said you could have Jalen Milroe versus Jackson Arnold because I'm taking Jalen Milroe versus this guy that only I've heard of. Okay,
no,
I'm not making fun. I'm making fun
against a guy that only you've not heard of. I think
he's in the South. I have 28. Have you heard of him, Ari?
I have, yeah. Okay. The thing that I think you should have done to kind of ease the waters a little bit there, Landis, is to just use the Ari cop-out, which is it's the second game of the season, and I can't wait to see what Jalen Milroe looks like under the new Kalen DeBoer offense, and it's that could be the next major star of college football with the new system and a year of development and having a pretty productive year. And I thought his transformation from the beginning of the year to the end of the year last year was a sight to behold. So I think he's going to be really good this year.
Yeah, I think he's going to be awesome. He was my Heisman pick when we did a couple episodes ago. But it's also it's a pretty fun. The idea is pick a fun quarterback matchup. You will find few that are more fun than these two going in the same game.
Week 2 is crazy though. Week 2 is loaded, is it not? With Texas, Michigan, Iowa State, Colorado, Nebraska. I think I'd take Eli Holstein versus Brendan Sorsby and Pitt, Cincinnati in week 2. So just let me know when you get to week 2 and you're lining up all the games that you want to watch. Let me know where Bama USF is on that list of all the other wonderful games in week 2.
It'll be on the screen.
Byron Brown,
7 o'clock.
Be on your 7th. I've got to buy a 7th TV show so I can watch Byron Brown this week. All right. I'm just not
going to say the amount of times this show just completely just punches someone in the mouth. It's 6 times an episode. It's great.
It's just power. It's power conference elitist, Doug. It's okay.
No. Well,
you own it. You own it. That's all I can ask for is you own it.
The Venn diagram of North and Power Conference and Doug's give a crap mode, USF could not be further outside my Venn diagram. So is this Tom Herman? Is Tom Herman the coach of South Florida?
No, he's Alex Golish. Alex Golish is the son of the North.
Oh, son of the North. Well, you didn't say that. No, we love Alex Golish. Good luck to them against Alabama.
Watch him
Former
like
Western
400 yards now against Bama.
Alex Golish is a former Westerville Central defensive line coach. So
Heck, I know that. Yeah. Could throw a football and hit Westerville Central right now. All right. I'm going to take the pick that I was trying to scare you off of because we talked about it before the show. And I'm going to take Boston College versus Missouri, Thomas Castellanos versus Brady Cook, which is just a whacked out game. And Missouri plays Boston College and UMass this year, right? And do they play a third weird northern non-conference team? Missouri's schedule is crazy.
They play in the non-conference. They play Murray State, Buffalo, and Boston College.
Oh, they're not the one who plays UMass. Who plays UMass?
They play UMass too.
They also play UMass.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, right. Because they don't play. They don't play 9 games. Yeah, they don't play 9 games.
They're playing Missouri. It's like, should Missouri be in the north? They're playing Buffalo, Boston College, and Massachusetts. It's insane. But Thomas Castellanos, what's he going to look like in a Bill O'Brien offense? Brady Cook, I mean, he could be like a second round NFL pick leading a playoff team. Like, I think he's probably a guy to have in this conversation, right? So this is like kind of established guy who's done it and should do it to a high level again versus a curiosity of will Thomas Castellanos make a leap? So, and it's just a weird, awesome game. Boston College and Missouri, this is what non-conference games should be all about. So I imagine, Ari, maybe this one was not on your list.
Can I just ask you a question? Is Mizzou a north or southern team in your guys?
They're on the border. I count them as, well, we actually do count them as south. They are not officially a border team because they chose to be in the SEC and they cast their lot.
And the SEC can cram it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And if they weren't in the SEC, they'd be on the border. But they're south. They're south.
Okay. All right. Because I didn't know if we were going. Yeah, I'm very interested in Mizzou. I got two of my good buddies that I live here with in Dallas, or live in Dallas near me. One went to Mizzou, one went to Alabama, and they both bet like an insane amount of money against each other that their team will finish better. And like the Alabama guys, like I already spent his money. Like he can't even, like, the Alabama mind cannot comprehend that Mizzou could have a better year. And like I'm trying to convince him that like Mizzou might actually be really good and their schedule is pretty easy in comparison to some of their SEC counterparts. So yes, I think that it's a really good name to have on this list and certainly somebody I'm excited to watch.
Doug, did you? Because I was kicking around a Thomas Castellanos option, but I was looking at Boston College, Michigan State. Castellanos, Coach Childs. I thought that was a little.
That's a good one.
Or it's two North teams. But Brady Cook is good too.
Does Boston College play Syracuse? McCord versus Castellanos? I think
they do.
So,
yes, November 9th, Syracuse is at Boston College.
So a couple. I mean, it's just if you believe that Thomas Castellanos, who certainly flashed last year, if Bill O'Brien elevates him at all and Boston College gets interesting, that we like that their receivers are really good and they have a couple good running backs too. They have skill guys. If they can, Thomas Castellanos can get a little time, I think he has a chance to do some stuff. So that's our 15. We did not pick Carson Beck of Georgia in anything. And Ari, how does that, like, if you weren't on a Northern show, would you have picked the Carson Beck game, or do you just kind of know what he is and you're not excited to watch him?
You know, I get in trouble a lot and say things on podcasts that make a lot of people angry. And I'll tell you, Carson Beck, like, done nothing for me, like, at all. Like, I think that he's an efficient player, and he's been fun to watch. He's had good throws, but like, this lack of the Lamborghini thing, and like, he's the star of the sport. It's like literally put on the game and like bring a pillow because like it's just boring as hell. Like, there's nothing about Carson Beck that makes me feel the urge to turn on a game. Is that okay to say? Like, I'm not saying he's not so good. Okay, it's boring.
It's so okay. This is a safe space. Did you consider a Carson Beck Georgia game? I mean, Carson Beck plays Jalen Milroe and Quinn Ewers and Jackson Dart, which is the whole point, and Cade Klubnik and Nico Iamaleava, which is the whole point of Georgia's season. Like, they play some real quarterbacks, which is why I don't think they're cruising to anything. Did you ponder any of those games, Bill?
Yeah, I pondered them. To the Texas game against Quinn Ewers, like, Those are, I think, the two guys who were considered the best returning quarterbacks in college football, right? That's probably the consensus. So, like, they're playing against each other. They should probably be picked in a draft of the most interesting quarterback matchups. But I'm okay that they weren't, honestly, because I agree with Ari. Like, I tried to lean more toward entertainment value, or like interesting. And Quinn and Carson Beck are both very good. I don't know that I find them all that interesting. So I'm okay with them not getting picked.
Here's what I'm going to say about it. I remember last year I went to the Alabama-Texas game, and there was a Friday night game. It was Kansas versus Maryland, I think, was the game. Kansas was playing somebody, and Jalen Daniels absolutely cooked whoever they were playing. I was watching it alone in a hotel room. Like, one quarter of that game was more entertaining to watch as a consumer of college football than Carson Beck's entire catalog. I'm not trying to be a hater. Do I sound like a hater?
I love it.
Is there a difference between saying I'm not saying he's not good? I'm saying to borrow the word from the beginning, the sizzle factor is not there. But I do have some names on my list that we didn't get to that I would have picked. I think if the draft had gone differently. I think Miller Moss at USC is interesting because I don't know what that's going to be. I do think that, like, them playing Garrett Nussmeier is going to be a good game. I just wanted to say publicly that I am so sorry to Malik Murphy, who I am obsessed with. Like, I feel like Malik Murphy, from just an intangible standpoint, definitely has that, like, Anthony Richardson drafted in the top 5 out of nowhere type of situation going. Yeah. And I just can't wait to see his raw talent on display in a place that's his job. So I don't think he's technically won the job yet, but if it's not him, then I'm boycotting Duke this year.
Yeah. Poor Duke, the breeding ground of great college football. Also, we didn't talk about Landis. Malachi Nelson from USC did not win the starting job at Boise State.
Because I was like, oh, when you first said we're going to do a quarterback draft, I was like, oh, Dillon, Gabriel, Malachi Nelson will be interesting. Nope.
Didn't win it. And, like, ESPN, like, dropped the story, like a big feature about Malachi Nelson, like 6 days before he did not win the job. So I think when you go to ESPN.com, you can find a 4,000 word story about Boise State's backup quarterback. Stuff happens sometimes.
I put a bet on Wyoming to win the Mountain West to make the playoff. So I'm happy that the Boise State decided to not start Malachi Nelson,
not start the 5-star from USC. This is our draft. Running it through very quickly from 1 to 15. Ari took Dillon Raiola versus Shedeur Sanders. Bill took Nico Yamalieva versus Jackson Arnold and broke my heart. I took Avery Johnson versus Garrett Greene. Ari took Avery Johnson versus Jalen Daniels. Bill took Connor Wegman versus Riley Leonard. I took Dillon Gabriel versus Aiden Childs. Ari took Cam Ward versus Graham Mertz. Bill took Garrett Greene versus Drew Allar. I took Jackson Arnold versus Quinn Ewers. Ari took Will Howard versus Dillon Gabriel. Bill took Cam Rising versus Daquan Finn. I took Noah Fafita versus Shedeur Sanders. Ari took Alex Orji versus Quinn Ewers. Bill took Jalen Milroe versus some guy. And I took Thomas Castellanos versus Brady Cook. Exciting? Feel a sizzle?
I'm excited.
The guys who got picked twice: Avery Johnson got picked twice, Garrett Greene got picked twice, Jackson Arnold, Dillon Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, and Quinn Ewers. Nobody got picked 3 times. I think we held ourselves back from taking like 5 Avery Johnson games.
Yeah, and you held yourself back from picking every West Virginia game.
I did.
Which I'm proud of. Good job. Yeah.
Garrett Greene, Jalen Daniels, Garrett Greene, Rocco Becht broke my heart. Garrett Greene, Noah Fafita. And Avery Johnson, Rocco Becht in Farmageddon also was right on the tip of my tongue, and I didn't do it. So
I think it was a pretty good spread in terms of what we covered there for sure.
Yeah.
All right, now you guys are tired of football. Let's talk about frozen pizza. We'll do that next on Whatcha Watching, Whatcha Eating, Whatcha Thinking on Kings of the North. Back on Kings of the North, Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis, and our special guest, Ari Wasserman. Finally, the football's done. Who cares about football? Let's talk about frozen pizza and what you're streaming. Ari, we'll start Whatcha Watching with you. You been watching anything good?
I watched a show that I thought the ending was terrible, and I don't know if I'm allowed to do a spoiler, but have you guys watched Presume Innocence on HBO?
Oh, don't spoil it. Don't spoil it.
Okay.
You can talk generally about it. I want to watch it. I have not watched it yet. Have you watched it, Landis?
I don't even know what it is.
Oh,
it's
a
show about a chief prosecutor who was having an affair with another prosecutor, and that prosecutor wound up dead, and then he goes on trial for her murder.
It's off from a movie.
It's from a movie in the 90s. Yeah, and I never saw the movie, so I don't know if the ending was the same as the movie or not. But I don't want to ruin it.
Jake Gyllenhaal?
Jake Gyllenhaal's in it. Really good
Peter
actor.
Sarsgaard? I love Peter Sarsgaard.
There was a lot. It was great acting, great cinematography from what I know about cinematography. And I was like at the end of my seat the entire time. And I could not stand the ending of it. I didn't think it was well thought out. And I thought that the first 7 episodes were excellent and everybody loved the ending. So I'm upset that I can't yell about it at you guys. So you watch it and we'll talk about it. I thought it was a really good show. And I think the entire point of television is to be entertained. It entertained me for 8 episodes. But when it was over with, I went into crime podcast, Ari, because that's all I listen to when I'm driving, usually just like some grotesque, obscene murder and how they caught the person who did it. Like that's how I get away from sports.
Your daughter in the back seat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, that was when my daughter's in the back seat. It's abrasive rap music. But it's I started to think through the ending that they tried to shove down our throats, and it doesn't make sense. So I was just really upset about that.
Does it backwards affect your enjoyment of a show when you feel like you were entertained, but then you get to the end and you're like, oh,
yes.
Like it make you think like I didn't like it as much along the way.
Like, I mean, I don't know that makes sense because you were entertained in the moment. Because like I got 7 hours of great television that I was very entertained by, and you can't reverse what you were entertained by. Yeah. It definitely changes how I view the show. Like I thought the show was one of the best shows on television of the last few years, and now I will never watch it again or think about it again.
Yeah,
because of the ending. Yeah,
no, it's good to be mad. I think that's fair.
I don't mind that so much. Like if it's like a limited series, it doesn't quite stick the landing in the way I was hoping. It doesn't ruin it as much for me as like investing 7 seasons in something and then you think the ending stinks, right? Like Lost or something like that. Like
I feel like Lost, and I didn't really watch Lost, but from what I understand about Lost, it kind of felt like they were making it up as they went, and then at the end they didn't really know where it was going. Like the thing I loved about Breaking Bad, which I think is the greatest drama of all time, is that every single thing they did a good job of making relevant, and like everything added up into a direction that it went, and it ended. You might not have loved the ending, but everything mattered from season 1 all the way through, and it was well done. Like I feel like the first 7 episodes of Presumed Innocence were about, I can't say it without giving it away, but like it was not well thought out, and I felt like we could have stuck the landing a lot better because the first 7 episodes were so well done.
Yeah.
Is it that he's Spider-Man? Is that the reveal at the end that Jake?
I mean, it might as well have been to me. It might as well have been. Yeah. It's banana.
I murdered her and I'm Spider-Man.
My number one thing in entire life is just nonsense. I have no ability to handle, as Landis has seen many times, just nonsense. And I thought that the ending was nonsense. So if you've watched the show and you're listening to this and you have a problem with it, I'll talk to you about it, because like I rant about it to everybody that has seen it, and like most of the time they're angry at me. So when you watch it, it'll be interesting to discuss it, because I want to know if you're on my side on this thing.
Bill, you watch anything good?
Have you guys ever seen the movie Shot Caller? It's on
no,
Netflix.
But I've listened to a podcast about it.
You listened to the Ringer podcast about it?
Yes.
What's like Rewatchables? It's like a few years old. It came out in 2017, I think. It's a brutal movie. And I actually watched it last night. Because I was like,
with your baby. I'm just envisioning all you guys consuming all this stuff now with just your baby sitting on your lap.
Yeah. I did not watch it with the baby. I watched it after I was done taking my Byron Brown notes. It is like,
speaking of brutal.
Yeah. It's the guy from Game of Thrones, Nikolai Coster-Waldau, is like the main guy. And if you can get past the fact that he's Danish and like doesn't have his American accent like nailed down completely the way he probably should, it is probably, and I guess I'm not a connoisseur of the genre, but in terms of like giving you a real life taste of what being in prison is like and what it can do to a person, this movie is pretty intense. It's violent at times for sure, but it's more like emotionally kind of draining with some of the stuff that they show you that the character has to go through and like do just to kind of survive, and like what he has to become and what that leads to in his life, and kind of destroying the entire thing. Like it's a hard watch, I think, but it was a really well done movie. It's not super long either. It might be like an hour and a half. it's pretty well acted. Like there are a lot of bit parts in it that I think are really well done. So I'd recommend it to anybody who can like kind of like stomach watching a movie that has like prison violence and stuff in it. Like it's not for the faint of heart, I would say, but if you can tolerate that, it is a very well done movie.
Is it one of those where it makes you realize that in your own life you are constantly one stupid decision away from a life in prison?
Yeah, I mean the thing
want to be reminded of that.
Like he was like a perfectly normal man who like made one really bad decision and then ended up in prison basically for the rest of his life. Yeah.
I have two thoughts here. I have to ask because like you're the second person, Doug, that I've heard. So I have a friend who watches or goes and sees movies, but before he sees it, reads the entire like synopsis, like the entire thing, and then like spoils the ending, and then goes and watches the movie. And now here you are talking about like listening to a podcast about something you've never seen. Like, what's the point of like? Why do you do that?
If it's a movie that I don't think I ever will see, then I just like hearing people talk about like how it came together and what they thought of it. So if it's a movie that I think I will see someday, then I don't do it. I don't love having stuff spoiled.
But if you found out that like they really love the way it came together and all the things that you were looking forward to hearing, does it ever make you want to watch it?
Also, I have a terrible memory. So like, even though I know that I listened to a podcast about this and Landis just talked about this movie, I have no idea what happens in the movie. So like, I've forgotten what happens. So it's a wonderful, my memory is the worst memory of anybody I know. And it's bad in a lot of ways, but I am able to consume content that I have previously consumed and be surprised by it. And also consume content that I've had spoiled for me. And I'm like, oh, I forgot that I had it spoiled. So I'm good.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
I'm feeble-minded.
But I do think that there is some sort of psychopathic behavior going on if you are somebody who reads the entire plot of something before watching it. It's like, what do you like? Nobody could ever say anything to, and I get mad at this person. Like, why do you do this? And he goes, I can't help it. I'm like, okay, well,
no, that seems wrong. That seems wrong.
Very weird.
So I started watching this series Bad Monkey on Apple that has Vince Vaughn in it. And it's just somebody, it's based on a book. And it just feels like somebody just sat down and wrote a character who is Vince Vaughn. And then just was like, I hope Vince Vaughn does this. Because it's just Vince Vaughn with hair plugs being Vince Vaughn the whole time. It's just quippy, snappy.
Sounds amazing.
Like I'm just Vince Vaughn in the Florida Keys, Vince Vaughning all over myself and Vince Vaughning all over everybody else. So if you like Vince Vaughn, it is the Vince Vaughniest thing you could ever watch. I think there's only 2 episodes out of it so far, but it's of a certain era. Like if you're 26, I don't know if you're like, oh, give me that guy from Swingers just doing chitter chatter. But if you like watch Wedding Crashers whenever it's on and wait for the staircase scene, this is for you. It's just him being him.
I think Landis and I both agree. Yeah. I think Landis and I both agree that The Breakup is one of the greatest television, movies ever made. And like all it is like Vince Vaughn dialogue. And that's the reason why I love it. So then
I've missed that in my life. Like we haven't had that in so long. I think he's been doing like some more serious stuff. I couldn't tell you the last like new Vince Vaughn thing that I watched. So I'm excited about that. I'll check.
He gave up. He gave up on trying to win an Academy Award. It's like, I'll just be me. Which I relate to.
Nice.
I love
that. Yeah. All right, Ari. This is the money shot. What you eating?
Okay, so I'm on like my 900th failed diet at the moment, but I'm actually doing really good this time. And I found at Whole Foods this thing called the Better Bagel. Okay, and obviously they always tell you that you're not supposed to eat carbs or you're supposed to limit your sugar when you're on a diet and keep it low calories and all that stuff. The Better Bagel.
That's what I've been doing wrong.
Yeah.
Write this down.
The Better Bagel is 140 calories and has 25 or 30 grams of protein in it and very few carbs. And it actually is a very passable bagel. So like, even if you are trying to keep things a little bit, on the healthier side, you could put a little cream cheese on there or light cream cheese, and it's an everything bagel, and it tastes like you're eating an actual bagel, and it's super heavy because there's a lot of protein in it, and it keeps you full for a while. And like, I would say that like, if I am ever successful in ever getting back down to my North Face jacket weight, that the better bagel would be part of the reason, if not the entire reason I made it, because it makes you feel like you're eating a bagel. And that is the most difficult part about dieting. It's not getting that release of having something with bread in it. And I think it bridges the gap there pretty good.
I think $42 for 12 of these things.
What? I mean, they're like $9 and you get 5, I think, or something at Whole Foods.
Oh, wow.
Maybe looking at the wrong.
I don't know if it's this one. I definitely have looked online at some bagel thing that's like, you can't get around here. You have to order it from New York. And I've been intrigued by it. I'm glad to hear a good review of it, because I just can imagine the scientists like in the lab being like, should we spend our time solving the climate crisis? Or what do you think about a protein heavy, low carb bagel? And it's like, that will make people happy. You can't go into it. You can't go into it thinking like, oh, this is going to be as good as like Blocks on the east side of Columbus or something. Like it's not. You go into it knowing what it is, but for what it is, they do a very good job of seasoning it with the everything seasoning, so that like your brain is tricked to like focus on that, and it's soft and it tastes pretty good. And when you put cream cheese on it, which is 0 sugar, you really do. You could have like a 200-calorie breakfast that feels like you ate a bagel and have 30 grams of protein and get your day started off right. And I eat them for dinner sometimes. Try it out. I think bagels are maybe the best food in America, right, Landis?
Yeah, they definitely are. If I could find a way to maintain my current bagel consumption, but do it in a healthy way, I'm all about that.
And it's like, I don't even understand why. So like, and I know we've talked about this in the past, but like, they always say like, you can't get a better slice of pizza than the one that you can get in New York, right? You literally cannot get a better bagel than just a random place in New York. And I want to understand why. And if you say it's the water, I'm going to slap you. Like, there's got to be a way around this. Like, why can't you make really, is it really the water? That's it? Yeah. It's just the water? That's the explanation for why you can't make a good sub sandwich?
Is it river water? What's the deal with the water that makes it so good?
I think it's the way that I think it's treated differently on the East Coast. The same thing in Philadelphia.
So you don't think that you could make a really good New York bagel in Albuquerque, New Mexico, because it's not near the water? Like that can like match up toe to toe with the bagel shops that you get? And every good New York bagel is made in New York City?
Yes.
Well, then
I think you can get very good. You can get good. Like there's places in Columbus that make good bagels. I think I've talked about Sammy's Bagels before on this show. They're good, but they're not 100% the same thing.
They should be sending water out. In New Mexico, you should be able to order like 10 gallons of New York water and have it delivered to you.
Water? Like
what's the pizza spot in Phoenix that everyone likes? Don't they bring in water from New York to make their dough?
Yeah. What? I've never eaten there though. So but everybody waits 6 hours and says it's the greatest pizza ever. It seems like foo-foo-y to me. But it just bothers me that we live in a world that like we can solve all these major big time issues. It's like, do you want to FaceTime your relative who lives across the world? Yeah, let's do it. Oh, we cannot fathom or figure out a way to make a New York City bagel in Dallas, Texas. Like, how hard is it? Let's figure it out, guys. It bothers me.
Figure it out.
It doesn't seem like, it seems like such a crappy excuse to me. Like, it's like, oh, it's the water. That's it. Like, we can't,
it's just no way
we can overthink this. And I'll pay $10 for a good New York bagel. Like, I'm not above that. If you have to pay extra money for the shipping of the water, then do it. But there's no place in Dallas or Columbus or Phoenix or any other places that I've lived that ever can match just an egg and cheese bagel from some random bodega in New York City. And it bothers me.
If you can get them mailed to you, though, they'll freeze them and mail them to you.
I mean, I guess, but is that as good as it? I don't know. I mean, I just think
if you opened a bagel shop in Texas called Stars Matter, and like the little centers of the bagels were all cut out of stars instead of circles, and it was known as Ari's Bagel Shop, and like you'd be a millionaire like by next week.
Really refuse to believe that is the like whole explanation for it. Like if like my life goal was to make the best possible bagel on the face of the earth that can go toe to toe with New York City, like then I could not solve that problem if I had the money and the means to do it.
Maybe this is why you left The Athletic. He's solving the bagel crisis.
Yeah.
Bill, what are you eating?
Not healthy bagels, but I should be.
Oh.
There's a place in Columbus. I think it's Kolache is how you say it, Kolache Republic. And I actually did not. They have them like it was a Czech. I think it is like it's like a sweet bread. It can be savory or sweet. And I've had them there before. They're very good, but that's actually not what I had. What I want to talk about. Their special over this past weekend was an apple pie cinnamon roll which was like a cinnamon roll as you would expect it, but then you cut it open and it's filled with apple pie filling, and it was among the greatest things I've ever had in my life.
Oh,
I just like, it makes sense, right? Apple cinnamon like go together very well, but I never thought of combining apple pie and cinnamon rolls into one delectable treat. And this place did it. This place did it with a nice vanilla bean frosting on top too. It was quite nice. I don't know if they're going to have it all the time, but I saw it on Instagram and thought that I must have this. And now every time I see it, I'm going to go there and eat it because it was delectable. I'm a big apple pie guy and a big cinnamon roll guy.
I don't want real fruit in my sweet treats. So I don't like the fruit pie thing. I would like scoop out the actual apples and just eat the cinnamon with
You don't like apple pie? You wouldn't like as a kid crush a tasty cake apple pie?
No, I used to get like the apple pies at McDonald's and just eat the crust and throw the apples away.
It's a handful of apples.
Is it real apples anyway? It's sugar apples. I mean,
yeah, I don't want those. So once upon a time, I made you guys eat Wow Bao in Chicago when we were there, and I hyped it up as the greatest food ever. And you guys were like, it's kind of like a bun with some chicken in it. And you thought it was okay. I overhyped it. I admit that I overhyped it. But this is the progress. This is what we're talking about, Ari. We're talking about solving problems and the progress of America. That was probably in 2016, maybe, that we were going to Chicago, and they only had Wow Bao in Chicago, and it was like hot Chinese buns, and we got to go eat these things. And now I was in a casino in Indiana, and they had a Wow Bao vending machine on the floor of the casino. And I put in $7 and got 2 hot Wow Bao buns in 30 seconds. And good? It has gone from, it was the exact same thing. They had a whole storefront in Chicago 7 years ago that it was like, well, if we want to get them, we have to drive to Chicago. And now it's like getting a Coke out of a machine. I couldn't believe it. And it's simultaneously like, oh, it makes it a little less special, but also like, I hope there's a Wow Bao vending machine in every gas station in America by next year, because it was a miracle. So watch for them, Ari. They're coming to Dallas.
And I love that you were in a casino too. That makes me feel good. I'm happy you're out there. Yeah. No, the vending machine movement. There's a lot of things that you can do with a vending machine, I think, that we haven't explored yet. I think Pizza by the Slice vending machine is out there somewhere that, like, if perfected, could be done the right way. For sure. I'm happy that it's more available to you, Doug. It's closer.
It's the only thing that I'm like pro robot on. It's like, I'll do that. That if, we don't need to have a person standing there giving me a Wow Bao. I can let a robot do it. So, all right. Ari, what are you thinking about?
Okay, so I'm going to give you guys I've got 3 thoughts, and I want you to pick which way I go. Do you want a restaurant-related thought, a food-related thought, or a rant about how they don't make good movies anymore? Like, this is a choose-your-own-adventure.
I've heard the last one a million times. So
okay. It bothers me.
Sorry, they don't keep making Casino. Please do one of the other rants.
It's not. Okay. You know how when you go to a restaurant in America, just like any restaurant, whether it's O'Charlie's or Chili's or whatever, they always have chicken fingers?
Mm-hmm.
Why are steak fingers so hard to find? Like, why is country fried steak a thing that, like, you have to go out of your way to find? Like, don't you think that steak fingers that are just like chicken fingers, but like beat down steak that are deep fried, like, I'm not saying they should be as prevalent as chicken fingers, but why is it like, if I said, Landis, I'll give you 30 minutes in Columbus, Ohio to go get steak fingers, like, that would be a chore. Like, what? Like, why is that? Why is there such a huge distinction between those two things when arguably you could make the case that steak fingers are better? It bothers me that I can't get steak fingers.
I've never heard of steak fingers.
Yeah, neither have I, but I want to try them.
Where have you had steak fingers at all?
I mean, they have them at Dairy Queen sometimes, but like,
not in the north. Only in Texas.
Well, maybe you should come down here and taste the South. Yeah. No, so country fried steak, obviously, right?
Yeah,
for sure.
Just all steak fingers is country fried steak cut up into chicken fingers.
If you want to be
the fact that you're baffled is my entire point. Like, that's like the whole thing. Like, why is it so hard to find these things? That should be as prevalent across the country in every restaurant the same way chicken fingers are, and it bothers me that, like, people are like, yeah, they're good. I never get that. Like, I would
imagine that steak is much more expensive than chicken, right? Is that where we start? Is that where we start that conversation?
But I mean, what is it? Is it 30% more expensive? So it's
$12.99
instead of $9.99. Like, I mean, like, let's figure it. Like, again, let's figure it out.
You're not using I imagine you're using the less desirable cuts of beef for steak fingers.
Yeah, I don't
too,
think
right?
you're getting filet mignon from, what is the Wagyu beef from what country is it always like when it's good?
I would like six Wagyu beef steak fingers, please.
From a vending machine.
I just think that like we have as a country plateaued on the staples, and like there are other really delectable foods that could be staples that are on every restaurant that just don't exist anywhere. And I find it to be like troublesome. Like country fried steak in general is a niche item. And I think it should be in more restaurants than it is. Like the whole chicken finger empire is this long drawn out thing. And there is a cousin to this that is more delicious, in my opinion, that gets served with gravy that is basically non-existent, to the point that my fellow food enthusiasts on this podcast are like, I don't even know what that is. Like,
yeah. Right. We've clearly let the hamburger take over the beef fast food market, and it has shoved out any opportunity for steak fingers.
But the fried chicken sandwich has infringed on the burger. So I think that the beef
trying to
should infringe on the That's like, it's a game of risk out here, guys. Come on.
Look at that. I didn't know we were drawing battle lines. We're all about battle lines on this show. I did not realize we were drawing a beef chicken battle line here.
Yeah,
infringing.
Just got to think about these things. That's all I'm saying. Just think about it.
I like it.
You're just come on here. You've invented 2 restaurants for yourself. For real. Like just you have a kid to send to college eventually now. Like a little entrepreneurship from Ari Wasserman here is not a bad idea.
I always do have these thoughts, and I'm sure you guys have had them too. It's like, if you weren't a sports writer, what would you do? And I think that I heard the restaurant business is terrible, but I think I would want to make a restaurant that was mine. Because here's the last thing, and then I'll shut up for the rest of the show. I know we've got limited time. But I build up, and I'm sure you guys do too, traveling as much as you do for work, like cuisines and other places a lot. Like, oh, I can't wait to go to this place to eat X, or I can't wait to go there to eat X. And 8 times out of 10, probably for the most part, you eat something that was, pretty good. You enjoyed it. But like, how often is something just rocking your world? Like that you go out of your way for? Like, I think a lot of times when I eat things that are bad for me, I'm filled with regret because it's not worth it. I built it up to be so good, and there's no way that it could ever reach like my expectation. Like, I want to create a restaurant called Great Expectations where it actually meets. Like when you build it up, like I want to be in the kitchen like that dude from Chef, like, making, I want to make the perfect pizza or the perfect steak finger place, so that when people talk about how good our restaurant is and they come, it lives up to the hype, because I am disappointed constantly. And like, honestly, one of the biggest regrets of my life is gaining a bunch of weight on food that wasn't worth it.
So if Ari wasn't a sports writer, he would be a failed restaurateur. That's what we're figuring out here.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm still a sports writer. Yeah.
All right, Landis, what are you thinking about?
My child is 19 months and he's starting to understand things. And Doug, you have children who are older, and Ari, you have a daughter who's a little older than my son. Do I need to stop cursing? Like, is that a thing? Like, is that like, I know people always worry about like, oh, what my kid's going to say, whatever. Do I like, I'm worried that he's going to pick up some things he shouldn't be picking up on, but I also don't know if that's like actually a real thing. Did you guys do that when you had young, easily impressed upon children who were figuring out how the world works and how to talk?
The world curses.
Right. That's like my thing. Yeah.
So you may as well.
We just got into a huge husband-wife fight over this. So it's funny you bring it up. Because I have a cursing problem. Like, I curse and I say just inappropriate things in general that I shouldn't say that have nothing to do with curse words. You know this.
I guessed that was the side of this argument you were on. I was going to guess that was where you were. Yeah. I didn't think the story was going to be Ari's wife won't stop cursing.
No. She, every time I say a curse word, if Liv is in earshot, like she like gets mad at me.
Yeah.
And I just said to her, Brent, we're not going to shield her from the way the world works. Like, it's like, it is out there. My boss says the F-bomb to me during during a phone call for a budget. Like, it is just the world. And I feel like demonizing it and making it feel like it's some big bad thing is actually more counterproductive than it just being a thing. Now, I know you don't want your daughter or your son to go to preschool and say this, but like, here's what happened. I have to admit, A bee flew into our house a few weeks ago, and my daughter yelled the F word. So that is
right.
This is why we fought about it. And she said it in a way where she was like unmistakable. Like I'm repeating what daddy does whenever something bad happens. So like, I do understand the notion of like rein it in because you don't want them to repeat it in public. But at the same time too, like, I don't think it's worth an argument every time it slips while I'm having conversations. Cause I say it it's like, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, in my opinion.
Yeah. Or the effing genie.
Yeah.
It won't be an argument for us because my wife curses more than I do. But I'm just like, in general, do we need to dial it back because the boy's going to go to daycare and, you know,
he's from Philly. You know, he's got Philly blood.
Just ask. I think that would be speaking of businesses for Ari, a curse-friendly daycare. I think would be really good. Like, does your family curse? Does your kid do what you do? Bring them to
what'd you do with your
little
kids?
Little cursors. Hey,
Ooh, I'm
dropping off a little cursors. What happens there? Oh, all kinds of effing stuff. Right? Nobody's worried about it.
Doug, what did you do with your kids?
I just swore. I think we just swore.
Yeah.
Just generational. It's different. I can remember like hearing the F word for the first time. They're like being at my grandparents' house and like everyone sitting around talking. I was probably like 8. And I think my grandfather said the F word and I was like, oh my God, I heard the F word. And like to think, I mean, it's so generational. Like now it's like you hear at the grocery store.
Yeah.
All right. As we finish a 2-hour and 15-minute podcast, I want to bring this up. I've been thinking about a lot, especially as we're getting ready to go live with this show. It's not like we're not live. Like we never edit anything out. So being live is no different. But it's just I constantly am listening for this when I take in shows and podcasts and YouTube shows now. And it is my belief that people come to a show for the topic. They stay with the show for the people. Right? That if you don't like college football, you probably would never be here to begin with. But there's a lot of different college football shows. So then you choose the people that you enjoy listening to. But I am constantly trying to find, and I'm curious about the right balance of talking about the sport and the stuff that you're here for and talking about the nonsense, doing the grab ass, right? All that kind of stuff. Because I really feel like I am on alert for people who open their shows. And I've talked about it here. It's front of mind for me, Landis. Like the number one thing that I think about. That it's just too much nonsense and that I am here for a reason and you're doing all this other stuff that you think is interesting and funny and it's not, as we finish a 20-minute segment about frozen pizza and swearing at your kids. But we compartmentalize it. We just did all this football. If you don't want to be here for this, you can just be out on this. So I actually want to ask Ari about it first because you've done this away from us. You're doing this stuff constantly. What do you think is the right balance between doing the content of what the show is supposed to be about, but also letting your personalities out in the midst of the show without driving people nuts with like, oh, I'm here for football?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the thing is if the person likes you, then they want your rants. And if the person is just like, oh God, just get back to football, they're not there for you. They're there for football. So way that I've always done it is exactly the way that we just did this. You know, stick on football for the first 80% of the show or the first 90%, then go completely off the rails. That way, the people that came for college football got what they were promised. And then at the end, if they like you, they can stay. But the thing that I've tried to weave into my podcasting style, and, you know, I've had different producers over the years tell me different things, is that like, if I have a rant about something in the middle of a point that I'm making, then I just go do that. Like you can talk about football and steak fingers in the same thought, and it still kind of relate to like each other in a way. So like my thought process has always been like, when we started the Bad podcast 10 years ago and every other podcast that I've gone on, it was never the main thing of my job. So like, I always just wanted to be authentic and be myself because we were doing it to service an audience and to be fun. And like, now that it has become the main thing of my job, like, I don't want to change who I am or what we do. I just want to be myself, and myself is talking about Ohio State, Michigan. And oh, by the way, this steak finger thing just came to my mind. I'm going to talk about that for 30 seconds in the middle of the show. Then we'll get back on topic. So my advice, not that you need it from me because you guys are awesome at this and I should be taking advice from you, but like, just do your thing and be yourself. And people are coming to your show to listen to you, and they should be because you're awesome.
What's the balance, Landis?
Yeah, I don't, it's hard. Like what when I'm doing a podcast, I like the banter. I like getting off topic and doing kind of the sillier stuff. But then when I listen to them, I don't like that, right? So I try to keep that in mind. Like, and I felt this a lot of times with like when the three of us stopped doing I know how I say podcast, and it was like just Ari and myself, kind of without Doug to kind of keep us pointed in a direction. Like it didn't take much for Ari and I to get off on a tangent, like in the first 30 seconds of a show. And like, it was fun, but then you listen back to it. It's like, if I were a person tuning in for Ohio State conversation, maybe I would have liked us to get to that a little faster than we did on this particular episode. So that is always front of mind for me. I kind of I prefer a podcast where they just sort of like dive right in immediately. And it's not to say they won't, find themselves wandering into some grab ass along the way, but I don't want to start with that. I think it's probably.
We did have a lot of episodes where it's like we're talking about McFlurries 4, 5, 6 minutes into the show. That's probably not the way to do it. But I think that the best way is to outline what you're going to talk about at the first beginning. Like, I think that's like what they would probably teach you in a podcasting class now. Outline, and you do that a very good job of that, Doug. Like, we're going to get to this, and this right out of the gate. So people have the expectation that's been set of what you're going to talk about. Then, just be yourself would be my thing. But like, I don't listen to any podcasts where the hosts that I enjoy listening to do things that annoy me. I think that the person is either annoyed by you and your opinions or not. Yeah. And the thing, like when Andy and I were together back in the day, we did a segment called Random Ranking at the end of the episode where we took cars, ice cream flavors, free bread at restaurants, and ranked 1 through 5 at the end as a way to it was fun. I really enjoyed that segment. We got more interaction from people who listen to our show on those than football topics. So it's really hard to wade through the waters of people really want football, but people are really, really passionate about who has the best free bread at a restaurant.
Yeah.
Outback Steakhouse.
Best.
I like brown bread. I like brown bread.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good.
Brown bread. Brown bread tastes good.
You ever been to Olive Garden?
Yes.
I actually think that here we are. All right. People like ranking bread the best. We should just do a bread show. I mean, honestly.
Actually.
Forget about Ari's bread restaurant, a bread show.
Yeah. I talk bread.
I mean, Twitter bio says pass the bread still, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That would be the name of the podcast, by the way. It is I Talk Bread. And we just be us talking about bread. All right. That's it. Ari will be back every show from now on. No, not every show.
Would love that.
But we'll have him back on. We want him to have him back on.
If I were joining your show, this would be the perfect time to be he's on the show now. That would have been a cool way to do it. But sorry, guys, I'm not.
Yeah. But who knows what lies ahead for Ari Wasserman? What lies ahead for us is a live show starting next Monday, August 26th, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at noon, post-game show every Saturday at 11 p.m., all that live, plus some other stuff dropped in, including a Friday morning betting show. For now, as always, thanks to our producer, Mike Yarostowski, for making us look good and sound good, especially when we go 215 plus. Ari, great to have you here, brother. I hope you had a good time.
I love you guys. Really excited about your guys' future here. I know that we're going to try to do, hopefully, some more cross-intersection. Big fan of King of the North, and I do love what you guys are doing, and I think that the more time you stay together, the better it's going to be and the bigger it's going to get. So thanks for having me on, and forever rooting for both of you.
All right. He's Ari. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.